started in 1971, started as a junior secondary school, went up until grade 9. Then we were converted in 1977 to a new secondary school. So we took in students for grades 10 and 11. And in the 1980s, we became a high school.
Geisel High School is all about the journey to excellence. Just listen to the school's motto.
With courage, energy, and patience, we are the creme de la creme. We say to them, you are the cream of the crop.
It's why they're excited about the Social Entrepreneurship Club set up under a British Council project to teach students skills like digital literacy, problem solving, and critical thinking. The British Council helped organize sessions so students could meet the people behind successful social enterprises.
Do you know that you can...
Those young men that you see here,
Right?
The museum, we never get for going yet.
Social entrepreneurship is about merging, making profit and also social good. They're developing problem-solving skills that they will actually need for the real world.
Students have to create a business to solve a problem in their community or country, with seed funding provided by Victoria Mutual Foundation. The Geisel High School students were concerned about garbage, so they thought about recycling.
First, we think about recycling bottles. Second, we realized we didn't have enough bottles, so we thought about bamboos, which is popular.
So we're using recycled materials, plastic, bamboo, natural resources and so on to create lighting solutions. So we're planning to put lights in just about anything, whether it is a headlamp, a pen.
So we're going to start a drive, meaning we're going through the communities to take the fluorescent bulbs. Then Mr. Brown is going to extract the mercury from the bulbs, and then he's going to take the shell to us.
Mr. Brown is Conrad Brown, a Geisel High School past student who already does this kind of work for a living. He taught the students how to convert the bulbs.
The conversion includes using LED strips and a tubing for covering the LED.
So I have all art students doing the creative part of the work. So they will do the creative work on the bamboo, the designs of the bulbs, and so on, while I have the physics students, science students, doing like the conversions and so on.
The students are just at the start of the project, figuring out what to do and how to do it. But it's clear they're excited.
When I went home, I didn't literally have the bulbs and so on, but I used a piece of white hose, the garden hose, with a piece of stick and a piece of a bigger hose with a piece of bulb top and made one.
What have you seen this do for students? Does it make them excited?
Well, it makes them excited and also allow them to think critically.
Why do I care, sir? Because I want to see changes around me, sir, that can create a positive impact on everyone.
I've seen the students, they have a different walk, they have a different pep because they think this is very special.
The British Council and VMBS, they have been doing a good job and to introduce entrepreneurship in schools, especially for students who wants to be accepted in society. So the students now can have some self-worth. They can know that, well, I can do this, I can put this out in the world, this is my idea, and in the end we'll have productive citizens.
Globally competitive. What's the term?
Now, if they can see that they can use what they would have thrown away, the battery of a phone, some bulbs and so on, and make a living, we don't know what else we'll think of.
It's a possibility.
The possibilities are there.
The exposure from the program made me know more than my classmates and has improved my grades, said one student of the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools project. Overall, says the evaluation report into the program, overall, the program has observed
was observed to have some effect on students' confidence in critical thinking, leadership abilities, and collaboration skills. My young men are more open, says one teacher, as a result of the exposure. They are now talking about taking life more seriously and meaningfully. Their self-worth has increased immensely. The words of a teacher quoted in the Boys in Education report. I didn't take life seriously, but now it causes me to think twice about everything, said one such student to Jay, who participated in the Boys Can Summer Creative Competition. I was able to see changes in student participation. Usually, only a specific set of students would participate in class, discussions, etc. But with the techniques taught, I was now able to get participation from all students, said one teacher in the core skills program. All of this is evidence of the impact of all of these programs in a very short space of time, and why we have all come today to the second annual summit of the Social Enterprise in Schools project to talk about where we are now and how we can move forward. I'm Archibald Gordon, your moderator. Thank you for joining us. And special welcome, first of all, to the young men and women who are at the center of this program. Special welcome as well to His Excellency Asif Ahmad, his British High Commissioner to Jamaica, the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, and other senior officials from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Mr. Matthew Samuda, Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security, Damien Campbell, Acting Country Manager of the British Council, Jamaica, Clover Moore, Assistant Vice President at the Victoria Mutual Group. They're the key funding partners in the Social Enterprise in Schools project, and their investment has been critical in allowing this project to take place. Other partners as well, special welcome to you, including the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation and the Planning Institute of Jamaica. We have much to talk about today, and to kick us off in terms of the discussion, I invite the Acting Country Manager at the British Council, Jamaica, Damien Campbell.
The Honorable Minister Favour Williams, Honorable Minister Matthew Samuda, His Excellency UK Ambassador Asif Ahmad, Dr. Grace McLean, other technical experts at the Ministry of Education, our partner, Mrs. Clover Moore, Assistant VP at the Victoria Mutual Group, Mrs. Tankita Chance Wilson, the manager for the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation, other partners, young people, teachers, and the public, good morning to you all. It is indeed a pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the British Council to this important event, an event where we discuss where we have come from over the past 4 years, and where we intend to go through mutual partnership that will benefit our young people here in Jamaica. The British Council prides itself in building connections, understanding, and trust between people in the UK and countries such as Jamaica through the arts, education, culture, and the English language. We also, importantly, see ourselves as the UK's Organization for Cultural Relations, and that is underpinned in our values, which speaks to being open and committed, being expert and inclusive, optimistic and bold. What that means is that we connect with young people, we connect with locals in Jamaica across our networks to do what is best for our young people today, improving their global outlook. Over 4 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, we started our journey here in Jamaica, leading on the social enterprise program that we've started. We started with the social enterprise in secondary schools program, which was informed by the relevant evaluation. Where, because of our work in over 30 countries, the British Council has seen where social enterprise has really supported young people to build their prospects, improve their prospects for employment, and also improving the necessary skills that they need for living. From this program, we've seen globally where it enhances the creativity of young people. It enhances their resilience, especially in times as this, where we're dealing with a global pandemic. It inspires. It allows young people to be more risk tolerant. It improves action orientation. And these are some of the qualities that we would have seen over the 3 years delivering our programs. The social enterprise program is well positioned to help young people address various challenges affecting them and also problems impacting their communities and improves access to those around them. We want to focus throughout today, importantly, on the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which speaks to revitalizing the global partnership for sustainable development. What it means is that through programs such as the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools program, we connect across organizations and networks, both in the UK and Jamaica, to improve the prospects, improve the impact that we seek to achieve amongst the young people. Just looking back, we have seen, as an highlight, the Social Enterprise program has, even though engaging just 15 schools as part of this initial program, we've engaged over 10,000 young people in face-to-face activities. And from that, we've had young people being very interested to start their social enterprise clubs. They've also been supported through master trainers who were trained by or consultants from the UK around social entrepreneurship to engage young people today around what it means to run a successful social enterprise, starting from your school, but eventually seeing themselves as a successful social entrepreneur once they transition to the work world. We've engaged their teachers to support them through the process, and throughout that we've had young people, teachers themselves, learning about how they can further engage their young people around social entrepreneurship. We've engaged multiple organizations in Jamaica, and importantly, in this important critical digital age, we've engaged over 18 million persons through various publications and awareness videos. I want to share with you a critical impact of what we talk about, a critical example of what it means for partnership. We've had, through the VM Foundation, seeing the benefits and the expertise that they have around financial literacy. They've developed a secondary students workbook that goes through various modules, very interactive booklet that teaches young people on understanding what it means to be financially literate in today's society. They've also gone ahead, the VM group, to promote the work that we've done through establishing a microsite that hosts all the information that we've garnered and disseminated around social entrepreneurship for young people across Jamaica and in other countries to learn about social enterprise. These are just two examples of what it means to partner across sectors to support young people in Jamaica. Goal 17 speaks to strong partnership, as I mentioned before. And when we see where there is a steady decrease in overseas development assistance coming to the Latin America and the Caribbean, it begs for continued partnership on the local ground, tapping into networks across the world. Our objective this morning is to discuss that, looking at the successes of the social enterprise program. We also importantly want to highlight some other programs that we've delivered within the British Council with partners. One such is the Boys Can Mentoring Program that we've partnered with the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation. We've engaged over 155 schools, with 19 of those schools allowing boys that are being supported by their guidance counselors to participate in an online mentoring program. We've engaged 825 young people face-to-face, also including girls, to understand and what it means to be supported through a mentor and discuss their life prospects. We've engaged 162 teachers in the process. We've engaged 23 organizations locally and 2.8 million people online through various publications. And interestingly, as was mentioned before, we are getting good testimonials from young people around how these programs have impacted them and their future, seeing that they are worthwhile, their thoughts and ideas are important, and they are change makers in today's society. Our core skills program engages teachers around 6 core skills: critical thinking and problem solving, communication and collaboration, creativity and imagination, leadership and personal development, importantly, digital literacy, and citizenship. The core skill program underpins the Boys in Education program and the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools program. What it does is engages teachers in better supporting young people through the delivery of their curriculum to acquire these core skills. And so, ladies and gentlemen, today our objective is to highlight the impacts of these programs and also explore what it means to formulate a stronger partnership in today's Jamaica for the benefit of young people. From our evaluations, we have seen where it is recommended that we design a program that speaks to skills for young people. It means supporting inclusive, quality education for all learners, including boys and girls and marginalized children. Enhancing also professional knowledge of school teachers, leaders, and policymakers. And we see it focusing on entrepreneurship, social innovation, financial literacy, boys mentorship, core skills. These are some of the few things that we see a program for the future delivering through a mutual partnership. And we have seen, looking at the various partners where our ideas connect, our objectives connect. And it is our objective going forward as a British Council and a partner that has strong expertise to convene all the relevant stakeholders, to bring everybody to the table and say, we're guided by the government of Jamaica, we're guided by the Ministry of Education, we're guided by the Ministry of National Security around how such a unified program can support our young people today and the challenges that they're facing, seeing themselves as change makers and people of tomorrow. We want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to the rest of our discussion going forward.
Thank you, Damien. No, earlier I shared some of the anecdotal evidence, some of the testimonials from teachers and students at the program, but we also have a lot of evidence gathered from our monitoring and evaluation reports and done into the various programs. So we'd like to share a little bit more detail on what has actually been achieved, specifically in the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools project. And to do that, I now invite, joining us via Zoom is Mr. Michael Marshall. He's Return on Investment Consultant in relation to the project. Mr. Marshall? Mr. Marshall, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I actually thought my colleague would be on the ground there with you, Mr. Moderator. I'm actually here to support my colleague, but I guess I would be. One second, let me gather my information here. But what I would like to speak to is really what the work that we have been doing with the Social Enterprise in Secondary School program. I hope everyone is hearing me okay. Particularly as it relates to our previous engagement over the last quarter of 2020. And particularly what that would entail is really what we executed, which was a 6-week online program, which was developed in line with the British Council Social Enterprise in Schools Resource Pact. And as Damien would have suggested, would have embedded a lot of the work they have done to develop and to improve the core skills of the participants. And in terms of what we had outlined in that 6-week program, is we wanted to design a program that would act as a Kickstarter, if you will, or a rapid response program that could be implemented on a larger scale over time. And so scalability became an important factor in whatever we were thinking to design, despite it being a 6-week online program. And so what we've done in terms of our approach to design such a program is engage an iterative process where we developed an initial design note with the fundamentals based on the resource pack. And then we engage at different levels, the different stakeholders, from the principals, to teachers, to students who had previously participated in the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools program, as well as the master trainers. And we did this iterative process where we co-produced the 6-week program. Then we went on to develop the course materials, and then re-engage the master trainers for their input into the course materials as well. From this, what we then did was we executed an online program via Google Classrooms, which was done in 2 ways, in terms of live Zoom sessions, and also we set it up so it could be done asynchronously. Well, which is pretty much that students could be able to go on after the live sessions and still partake in the material. We also established in this round of in this phase of the program standardized course materials, training guides, workshop handbooks for the students. And from that, we had one standardized program across all schools for each participant. To support this framework, we then established other mechanisms via social media, because we wanted to, and these were encouraged to capture more engagement. So we had WhatsApp groups, which would have involved mentors from the Victoria Mutual Foundation who would support the activities that we develop, and as well as the teachers who manage the social enterprise clubs and the master trainers who would encourage student participation. And this, what we would have then done is execute over 6 weeks. Each week having been focused on a particular area. Week 1 would have been focused on student. Week 2 was focused on understanding their customer segments and building out a framework or a strategy to ensure that they were creating value for these customers. Week 3 then went into looking at the operational side of the business. And in week 4, they would have presented at their ideas at an event, the social entrepreneurship as a response to COVID initiative put on by the British Council. Week 5, we really focus on financial literacy. And then week 6 was really the ending of the program, where we brought students together in a social enterprise competition to celebrate all the work that they would have been doing over the 6 weeks. In terms of key points, well, before we get into key points, of course, the program was challenged by the COVID restrictions to varying degrees. The uncertainty surrounding the reopening of schools at that point was a serious issue in terms of recruitment and engagement. There was also some issues around connectivity, as this was, which was a challenging issue to tackle because it was a disproportionate issue where there were varying degrees of connectivity. And of course, the ministry would have been severely impacted by COVID and would have had a lot of other high priority matters. So the engagement that we had anticipated we would have had, understandably, would have been less. And from this, there are some key takeaways from the 6-week program, though, that we would want to highlight. Particularly, this from the previous phases, what we've seen now is a refinement of the program structure. So there's a consistent curriculum and consistent content. One issue, though, was that, of course, the program is not infused into the curriculum, the national curriculum. So it is treated as an extracurricular activity, which we were engaging students at a point that they were getting used to online schools in terms of their traditional or their standard curriculum, which was a new phenomenon for the participants. And then we are additionally introducing an extracurricular activity in an online version as well. So what the data is, we started to look into the data, and we are seeing, very preliminary though, but we're seeing hints of this evidence of drop-off, possibly what might be, I would venture to say, possibly to say that is probably fatigue, from being online for extended periods of time. Finally, what I would want to end at is in terms of looking at what the program, some general aims of the program and what to consider going forward, is really in terms of future implementation, the program can provide an environment to inspire young secondary school students, particularly at the grade 7 to 9 level, to experiment with entrepreneurship in general and social entrepreneurship in particular. It can also enable older students, possibly at the grade 9 to 11 level, who have already selected, more selected courses in the sciences or the arts, to experiment with business management and entrepreneurship, and particularly social entrepreneurship as well. And for students who have selected more business-related subjects, it would provide a practical and experimental environment in which they can take what they've learned, the theoretical side of things that they will learn in their everyday classes, and then be able to implement them in the social enterprise clubs and through the social enterprise in secondary school activities. I think I will pause there and turn it back over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Marshall. He's return on investment consultant working on the project alongside us. Now, we are about to head into a round table, and that will involve some persons on Zoom. So we're going to be asking those persons, including the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, the Honorable Favour Williams, and the State Minister, and other representatives from the Ministry, as well as from VMBS and the Grace and Staff Community organization, to turn on their microphones as we prepare to head into your microphones as well as your video as we prepare to head into that round table. So 10,264 young people engaged in social enterprise awareness sessions, 60 teachers trained in social enterprise methodology, 170 organizations engaged, 18 million people reached through publications and broadcasts just on the SESSJ project alone. Now, we've done a lot of important and really critical work in a very short space of time. But there's one thing that COVID-19 has taught all of us, is that more needs to be done. And the challenges our societies face continue, as today we're going to be talking about the road ahead. That's a critical conversation which will require partnerships, and I want to reinforce what is said about partnerships in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goal 17. Goal 17 says the SDGs, and they're essentially a blueprint for peace and prosperity for the future, can only be realized with strong global partnerships and cooperation. Official development assistance remains steady but below target in 2017, while humanitarian crises brought on by conflict or natural disasters continue to demand more financial resources and aid. So coordinating policies, it says, to help developing countries manage their debt as well as promoting investment for the least developed is vital for sustainable growth and development. The context, in short, is that we have serious challenges to face, but the experience on the SESSJ project tells us that we have some of the expertise to face these challenges. So today, we talk about how we can take concrete action to cement those goals, and how do we move forward. So welcome to our round table, partnering to accelerate education. To discuss this issue, we have several persons online, beginning with the Honorable Minister of Education, Youth and Information. This is Favour Williams, and several other senior officials from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, including the State Minister, Mr. Robert Morgan, Permanent Secretary, Dr. Grace McLean, Acting Chief Education Officer, Dr. Casson Troop, and other officials such as Winnie Berry and Winsome Gordon. We have Mr. Matthew Samuda from the Ministry of National Security. He's the Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security. We have the High Commissioner to Jamaica, His Excellency, British High Commissioner to Jamaica, His Excellency Asif Ahmad. We have Damian Campbell, who is here on stage with me. He's Acting Country Manager of the British Council We have Ms. Clover Moore, Assistant Vice President at the VM Group, or our critical partners on the SESSJ project. And we have Tankita Chance Wilson of the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation. So we begin with some brief introductory comments, and we begin with the Minister, the Honorable Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Favour Williams. Minister?
Sure. Thank you and good morning, everyone. Let me begin by acknowledging the Honorable Minister Nesta Morgan from the ministry here, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Senator the Honorable Matthew Samuda, Ministry of National Security, His Excellency the British High Commissioner, Mr. Asif Ahmad, our Permanent Secretary at the Ministry, Dr. McLean, or Chief Education Officer, Dr. Troop, other officials of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, private sector partners, principals, teachers, students, the media, good morning. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information welcomes the staging of this year's second annual Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools Summit. We welcome this summit as an important partnership with the British Council and our private sector entities, VM Foundation and GRACE, in the steps to heighten awareness about added opportunities for training for our students, especially our boys. We have been placing greater emphasis on increasing the digital and financial literacy of our students, as well as on technical and vocational education. To this end, as a matter of policy, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information has intensified the efforts to get more technology in schools and in the hands of our students to allow more of our students to be engaged in the digital world. We've also widened the scope of technical and vocational education training in our secondary level schools. Simply put, in today's world, our young people need to have a variety of skills and must be able to demonstrate flexibility and adaptability when they enter the workforce. It is also intended to improve access to work and further learning by ensuring that qualifications are relevant to employment and learning and meet the needs of learners and the job market, as well as education and training institutions. Given that technical and vocational education is playing such an important role in providing the skill sets required by enterprises within our economies, it is imperative that the expansion of technical and vocational education be a priority objective of all educational strategies. We recognize that there are challenges, including the relevance of the curriculum to industry needs, quality assurance in TVET provision, and teachers' competence in this area. The ministry continues to work with training institutions and industry players to increase the talent pool of trained, competent, and certified persons ready for employment in various sectors, including our business process outsourcing sector. We will continue consultations with human resource managers of companies to ascertain information on how to design professional development training programs for students. It is in this context that we are encouraging and pursuing more public-private partnerships as we work collaboratively to meet the needs of the industry and national economic goals. And I want to focus on one intervention that we've had. This is an intervention of the Jamaica Teaching Council, JTC. They recognize the challenges teachers face in educating boys. And so the Jamaica Teaching Council embarked on a program for the education of boys. It was designed to identify the issues and arrive at strategies for meaningful engagement of boys in education. The JTC investigated the perception of boys and found that they knew what they wanted out of schooling, but just did not know how to inform educators. Further studies revealed the factors contributing to the success of boys in education to be motivation through expectations and rewards, relevant teaching experiences, personal development, access to mentors, positive family support, instilling values, setting personal goals and interests, support to study in order to overcome learning challenges, exposure to trained teachers equipped to teach students with different learning styles, and interactive lessons among the strategies that were examined. The JTC found that in the program that they implemented over a 3-year period, which included teacher education and empowerment initiatives, strategies to engage boys in the activities in their class, interface with successful men through national fora, as well as new and novel ways to relate vocational and non-vocational education were very successful. To that end, there was an important handbook that was developed entitled Advancing the Education of Boys, Creating Equity in Teaching and Learning. And that handbook will remain a document to which teachers and other educators will be able to contribute additional strategies that work for boys' education. Of course, the Jamaica Teaching Council will continue to coordinate strategies along these lines. An important study that they did that I'll just share with you, it dates back to 2012. They asked 154 teachers to give words describing boys. Only 3 teachers gave positive words. Fast forward 5 years later, they did the same survey again, this time to 279 teachers. Only 3 teachers had negative responses. So what the JTC is doing has been working in our schools. And there are a number of examples that they've given in terms of small businesses in schools among our grade 11 students, the green classroom in which students were given Scotch bonnet variety peppers, and that became a main source of education for maths, for English language and science. Additionally, the students were able to turn that into a business. And there are many such examples of our students in our schools, how excited they are, how stimulated they are when we combine real world activity that allows them to connect to what they're learning in class to their own lives and to their future aspirations. So I will stop there this morning and to say again, thank you to the British Council and all the partners that have come together to stage this summit today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We will now turn over to Mr. Matthew Samuda, his Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security, to give us some brief introductory remarks. Mr. Samuda.
Thank you. I suspect you may have demoted me, but these things happen sometimes without notice. I'm happy to participate this morning. I think this is an important discussion that needs to be had. It's a very important development metric if we're truly to achieve what we have set out in Vision 2030. And it's a very important metric if we're truly to just simply improve the way we all live as Jamaicans. The need for our educational outcomes to improve is impatient of debate. When we look at the young men and young women who are in our custody within our correctional facilities, and then we look at the adults who are in custody in correctional facilities, there are some things that ring true. Largely, we find that their levels of education are simply unacceptable, and they're unable to participate in society in a particular way. It condemns them to low-level jobs, and in many cases keeps them trapped in a particular cycle that they're unable to break free from. We have taken this, I think, particularly seriously, and are intent on improving the educational standing of those who are either wards of the state or within our custody as adults. We have over 600 persons currently enrolled in varying educational programs that go from reading literacy programs and or numeracy programs. We have skills training programs. We go up to secondary education. We have persons who are registered to CXCs. And we even have, I think, just under a dozen persons doing tertiary education. We are very clear that this has to be considered a very serious metric for whether or not we've put in the basics that allow people to be considered rehabilitated. One of the things that we've not done as a country is truly looked at what is required for people to re-enter society, not in the same state that they would have entered our correctional facilities, but in a better space that allows them to participate in society in a meaningful way. In many ways, what we have done is that we hold and house people for approximately 3 years on average, and we return them to society, having lost, 3 years of their life, having not had necessarily the psychosocial support that they want, and in many cases, or in too many cases, not with improved educational standing or improved training. There's also a huge gap that we have identified and something that we're looking with our other partner ministries, certainly within even the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, which is how do we get them started in a soft labor market? Training people to go and seek employment is sometimes not the best start. What is the sort of reintroduction that will bring persons into their communities in a way that they're able to participate in a meaningful way that gives them pride, in a meaningful way that lifts the stigma that would now be attached to them as former inmates? But how do we get them from leaving our facility, being on parole, to being in some cases needing to start their own businesses? Because the truth is, in a soft labor market, even if they achieve tertiary education, they're going to have an automatic weakness in terms of as they seek jobs. So we're also looking at our programs to make sure that we're able to look at the interests, the healthy interests that our inmates have and our wards have, and prepare them for society in a way where they're able to start, in some cases, their own businesses and enterprises. So we're looking at all of the systems available throughout government in a manner that will bring them together and will also, give them a sense of purpose and a sense of pride. There are some programs that we are looking at that will supplement other efforts within society, where some of them who are low-risk inmates may be put to some sort of work effort. We have considered that if indeed they are to be paid for these efforts, even at a minimal rate, what we would like to do is to hold that money for them up so that when they're able to leave our facilities, it's in a fund where when they want to start, so if they want to be a barber, we wouldn't give them the cash, but we would get them the equipment and the startup fees using places like JBDC to get them up and running. Some of the things that we're looking at is, we found that many of our inmates want to go into entertainment. We're creating programs that also teach them about that, because it's not that entertainment can't pay and feed them and take care of their families as well. So that's a general feel of how we want to handle our inmates. There is, however, another risk that we have uncovered. And we're doing the research now, so I can't quote exact numbers, but one of the questions that we ask when persons are, for want of a better term, admitted or onboarded into our facilities is whether they have children. And we do advise the regional education officers and we advise the regional path officers so that they can go into the field and see if these children need additional support. But one of the things we've never asked is really how many of our inmates had parents who also interacted with the correctional services. And we're finding some interesting things, though preliminary, that tell us that the cycle of violence and the cycle of undereducation is inextricably linked. And we're looking at programs that we hope will be designed and will be effective in breaking this cycle, because simply advising, a school principal or a path officer in the area who probably has a number of cases that are concerning to them is not sufficient. I think we have to design programs in a way that keeps constant reporting and perhaps gives these children even stronger support than the basic systems would occur. I know we have some meetings coming up with colleague Minister Favour Williams to look at this program. I mean, I will go ahead, because she can't tell me no in front of you all, that I'm going to request a school principal of sorts, because we have director of education per se, but I think that person needs to function and be graded in the same way a school principal is. So I'm set up to provide a security outcome, not necessarily educational outcome. So I'm going to be leaning on her and her good offices to help us to significantly improve the educational outcomes, which we believe is the critical step in reducing the recidivism rate amongst inmates and wards. I believe that's sufficient to start as my opening remarks, and I will pause there. Thank you.
Minister without portfolio, I'm so sorry, Minister. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda. Now we're going to have then our next brief introductory comments come from British High Commissioner to Jamaica, His Excellency Asif Ahmad.
Good morning to each and every one of you. Minister Favor Williams, Minister Matthew Samuda, Minister Robert Nestor Morgan, and everybody who's been an enthusiastic supporter of this program. Our role really through the British Council is not necessarily to provide universal coverage for this difficult issue. It has many facets, as we've just heard, but it is where we can to pinpoint our assistance in a targeted way, which can actually make a difference. And we've had excellent support from the various line ministries in the Jamaican government, and the private sector has been exemplary in supporting us, and in particular, Victoria Mutual. And I've spent many good hours with Courtney Campbell on various platforms over the years in this particular social enterprise in secondary schools program. It is also a sign of our times that we can't do this entirely in a live format. And because I remember very, very clearly on the events that I've attended, that dynamism and kinetic energy that you see when young people come together to participate in the workshops, to actually show many things that they have actually created, physical examples of their creative talent. And that is really quite heartening. But I'm hopeful that in the months and years ahead, we'll be able to resume this activity in person. The thing that struck with me, not just with the Social Enterprise in Schools program, but also some of the other things that the British Council has done in terms of mentoring, particularly for boys, was that for many, it was their first experience of coming to Kingston. For some, it was the first experience of going into an organized meeting of any sort, let alone in a hotel. And I was already looking at the parts of the presentation coming today from the Pegasus, and I'm already envious of the wonderful thrones that our two presenters are sitting on. There's something magical about live interaction that this cannot substitute for. But it is nonetheless a good medium to do this. If I go back to some basics, it is absolutely proven through all of the policy work that we've done around the world that there's a direct link between education and the development status of a country. Every country that you look at, whether it's the United Kingdom, the fast-moving countries of the emerging economies, the path that Jamaica is on, and others who are yet to venture on that path, that education is an absolute necessary condition for development. And whether it's sustainable development goals or any other goal, it is simply not possible for an economy to prosper without that vital investment in education. Now, the UK government has made a global commitment to supporting education, and you see many facets of this, not just with the work of the British Council here, the Chevening Scholarship Program that we've been running for well over 32 years here in Jamaica and globally. And right now, the vocal manifestation of our education programs globally has found itself voicing more the opportunities that girls need to be in the formal education system. Here in Jamaica, of course, the situation is somewhat different. I don't discount the fact that girls need to be encouraged into education. There's plenty of scope for that. And but what we see here is that there is a greater crisis with boys in education disengaging from the school system and really not progressing. Just a couple of days ago, I saw some research here that indicated that there was a disincentive for the image of boys who were thought to be intelligent or clever in school. So there's a stigma attached to education for boys, which is, of course, completely contrary to where we want to be. Globally, and in the UK, you hear this quite a lot, which is criticism from employers that schools and universities do not produce employable people. Now, some of that expectation, I think, is simply wrong. I think a lot of adults forget where they were when they were at that age. But some of it does resonate. I mean, if people are coming up out of school as functionally illiterate or with very few of the necessary social skills, familiarity with IT, and generally being able to navigate around a formal system, then we will have failed our young people. And I think there's a real need not only to cover the essential curriculum, but also employability. And we've seen some good examples of this at work. I think the social enterprise in schools is one element. We also had the Princess Trust doing a project here when they first opened their offices here in Kingston, where they took a cohort of 70 young people and mentored them, introduced them to potential employers, and the placement rate from this project was 100% success. It just shows that investment in young people, whether it's a very short one or through the entire schooling process, can equip them for the world of work in a very different way. Minister Favour Williams alluded to this point about attitude of teachers to their students, and in particular, the negative attitudes that some of them may have harbored in dealing with boys. Through a different program that the British Council has been running, which is training teachers to teach better, one thing that has really stuck with me is, ever since I was exposed to it, was the scientific basis on which teaching methodology needed to change. The science was that boys, particularly from age 7 to 12, are biologically programmed not to be able to sit still and pay attention for a 1-hour class session. It is physically impossible for them to do so. Now, the remedy is not for the teacher to put them in the back of the class or to throw them out of the class, because what they will be doing is doubling the punishment. What they need to do is to follow some of the teaching methodology that has been recommended, which is to break up a full session into components where people can get about and do things, perhaps act out an element of a lesson, but do something that stops them being chained to a desk and then paying the penalty for biology rather than misbehavior. The other thing that is worth highlighting, and particularly in the context of social enterprise, is that the world of enterprise really is the single biggest employer in the world. And it's not just about big businesses. The backbone of the British economy and of many emerging economies is the small and medium-sized sectors, which basically means that entrepreneurship has to be something that young people are equipped with well before they leave school. But that does not mean to say to do businesses just in the traditional way. One of the weaknesses in the Jamaican system is that many so-called successful businesses are simply importers of goods and services invented abroad, made abroad, and simply sold here. Longer term, that will simply drain this country of its resources. What is required is local innovation and adaptation. And as a former banker myself, I cannot endorse more strongly the need for financial literacy, which was also alluded to, because whether you're an individual or in a business, financial literacy can literally mean your survival. The number of times I've seen businesses fail, not because they were bad ideas, but simply because they ran out of cash to fund good propositions. So whether people become owners of businesses or work for other business corporations, this is early and good preparation. But I'll add to this 2 more things, and then I'll finish. In the world of the public sector, government departments, increasingly they're having to adopt the private sector methodologies of management by objectives, of managing people, of looking at productivity, making sure that money is spent carefully, using modern telecommunications and other features, branding. I mean, all of the things that we take for granted in the business world are actually totally relevant in the public sector. In fact, the worst performing governments and government departments are the ones who have not really embraced some of the practices from the business community. And the final point I will make, and I've said this at very previous fora when we talk about social enterprise in schools, is that if you're involved in a social enterprise, whether as young people or as adults, make no mistake that business principles apply to social enterprise. People should not be embarrassed about the fact that profit is a goal, because that profit can be reinvested. That is the difference between a normal enterprise and a social enterprise, that it also provides a social good. And one opportunity for the Jamaican government to exploit further is where there are limitations in where the public sector can add to its own workforce or to bring on as permanent funding for any projects that come along. The use of a social enterprise gives you real scope. And let me use COVID as a great example. As the vaccinations roll out and as the need for communities to observe the protocols become important, the Ministry of Health and Wellbeing cannot be expected to simply add 5,000 people to the payroll to do this for what might be a year-long enterprise. But if local enterprises were formed to deal with COVID in terms of social behavior and promoting vaccinations, that would be tremendously effective use of that mechanism, and it turns a social good into a public sector delivery mechanism. So plenty of scope, and I hope, like all of you on this at this meeting, that we are not talking about the end of a program, but a renewal of this commitment that we've all made to bringing enterprise into this education system. I thank you.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. We're going to be hearing from two of the people who helped make this possible by sponsoring this program. First, the VM Group, and then we're going to be hearing from the Grace and Staff Community Development Organization. But I just want to quickly, before we move to Clover Moore, highlight some of the points raised so far, because one of the points of having the discussion today is to talk about what are the next steps. So what are some of the priorities that folks have been highlighting? The Minister Williams highlighted technical and vocational, technical and financial literacy as one focal point, and she also highlighted the importance of vocational education and also making education industry relevant and educating boys in particular, in addition to mentorship. The question of educating boys was a point also raised by Minister Samuda, a minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security. He also talked about skills training. He talked about psychosocial support for boys, how you deal with stigma, how you start businesses and enterprises, and the link between education and national security, quite important there. And again, the British High Commissioner, again, also raising some similar points. He mentioned the mentoring of boys, exposing boys to new environments, also mentioned by the Minister, Minister Samuda, stigma in educating boys and producing employable people, also mentioned by Minister Williams. So we seem to have a lot of common ground, and as we go forward, we're going to be talking about how we put all of this together in terms of a program going forward and how we move the agenda forward. So I want to introduce the people who have helped to make this possible, and specifically to turn over to Clover Moore. She's Assistant Vice President at the VM Group, and she will make some brief introductory comments right now.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our ministers, Minister Favour Williams, Minister Matthew Samuda, His Excellency Asif Ahmad, and all the other senior leaders from both the Ministry of Education and Ministry of National Security, and our partners. The VM Foundation is actively committed to purpose and advancing the financial well-being of Jamaicans at home and in the diaspora. And 3 years ago, when we embarked on this partnership with the British Council, it's because it aligned with our focus on youth development, and more importantly, social enterprise, because that's how our young people can actually learn the tenets of running a business successfully, understanding marketing, choosing your products, but also giving back into their community and making a difference. I think oftentimes our young people feel that they don't have a say, they don't have any power, and this is one way of empowering them effectively. I think as well, understanding money is really, really key, and how they can apply the lessons that they've learned to helping to shift even their parents in some of their decision making and their peers, and also being exposed to entrepreneurship at an earlier age helps them to not think of it as just a side hustle. The notion of a side hustle needs to be shifted. You know, it's more that they can come up with businesses that they can actually start with from very early to run and create employment and give back to advance their communities. We feel that partnership is a big part of what VM prides itself on, because I think together that's the only way we're going to advance Jamaica. The partnership with the British Council has helped us to touch so many students. Over 2 million persons have been impacted by just reading or being a part of our sessions. The training that the master trainers receive, the teachers receive, and as well our ability to take our expertise, which core is understanding financial education. And VM has the key differentiator of delivering financial education because we care. Not because we want to solely attract customers, we want to help Jamaicans to make better quality choices. And we were able to take our skill set and produce videos, create the workbook, and it's actually building out on a program that would have been prepared for adults that we then turn into a program that we offer to tertiary students at UE and UTech. And that content was what we took and created something for secondary schools. We are looking forward to, out of going forward, coming up with content that we can even give at the primary school level, not just at the secondary school level. I think as well, what's really important is helping to let our young people feel like they actually can make some decisions that will help to advance them. Because often the sense of powerlessness is what drives frustration, is what creates apathy, and what makes many of them want to give up. And so we are looking forward to driving a dialogue. We're looking forward to seeing how we could collaborate more effectively. We think that as well, the whole notion of that mentorship, a part of the program that we supported on, allow some of our volunteers to serve as mentors. We want to see how we can deepen that, and let's get talking and deciding and moving, because we want to see the results.
Thank you very
Over
much.
to you.
Thank you very much, Clover Moore. Now, final comments before we go into the next steps is from Tankita Chance Wilson. She's of the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation. Tankita Chance Wilson, are you hearing me?
Right. Government ministers, the Minister of Education. Yes, I'm hearing me. Are you hearing?
I am. Go ahead. I am. We are. Go ahead.
Oh, you are? Okay, great. All right, that's good morning. Now,
Just having a little bit of technical difficulties there in the era of Zoom and all of these digital channels, understandably. We're hearing from Tankita Chance Wilson of the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation. We're going to move on to having more of a sort of general discussion right now. So I'm going to first ask generally, in terms of moving forward, what people would like to see. So here's a question I have. We've all outlined different areas, and we had the VM Foundation there adding to those areas, talking about financial well-being and the importance of that, opening up businesses for young people. Businesses, said Clover Moore, as more than a side hustle, empower young people, and mentorship. We've heard a lot of these similar comments from different members of the panel, and I want to separate them into two groups. I want to separate them into the policymakers, the ministers,
full ministers. They're Minister of Education, Youth and Information, and the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Mr. Senator Matthew Samuda. And I want to ask specifically, in terms of designing and looking at a program going forward, what would you say, what would you like to see as the core elements of a program going forward, if you could pick one or two areas? I would begin with Minister Williams.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're saying if we could design a program, what are the one or two elements of those programs? Did I get that right?
That's correct. The core elements you'd love to see.
All right. So the core elements that I'd love to see in a program is a mixture of the theoretical versus the practical. Even at the very early stage in teaching, because we understand that students learn better when they're able to do hands-on, when they're able to touch and feel and smell and use all of their senses to interact with their world. So instead of just reading a book or doing worksheets, to the extent that practical application can be brought in, it will be great. And that's why I'm so excited about the technology that we are putting into the hands of our students and into classrooms. I know it's not the real thing, but it allows you to add to your learning. It allows you to explore beyond what you're learning in the classroom, and then we could take it beyond that. But that is one area to be twinning the traditional education, the way we've traditionally taught, to twin that with technology, I believe will enrich the lives of students. It will accelerate their learning, and it will, I think we will see better results as a result of that.
Thank you very much, Minister. If I may just turn that same question to Minister Matthew Samuda. In terms of designing a program going forward, what are the core areas you'd love to see?
I think colleague Minister Williams took the words out of my mouth, admittedly. The need for tactile learning, the need for experiential learning, I think is what will bring improved and sustained improvements in our results. You can't understate the importance of that starting very early if we're to change our outcomes. But for me, I think the big change or the big idea in the design of our programs is the integration of all of our systems of support that exist within government to provide the underlying support that students need while trying to learn at varying ages. I think sometimes, as small a country as we are, sometimes the government is so big that it doesn't necessarily integrate and cooperate with each other in a particular manner. So if we don't get what we need to get done through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, through the Ministry of Health, through the Ministry of Security, it makes Minister Williams' job virtually impossible. If we don't provide the sort of environment and support network that she needs to create these environments that facilitate tactile and experiential learning, I think that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So for me, a program or the design program or the program that I would like to see is one that integrates all the facets and aspects of government to provide support into Minister Williams' schools, especially from early childhood right through to certainly the end of secondary. And when I speak of integration, I mean, there are so many programs out there, some that sometimes we assume are coordinated and some that we assume are not. I'll give you an example. We've found that some of the schools that have consistently found themselves in trouble and consistently have some of the lowest passing rates and are known to be in troubled communities and are known to have discipline issues don't have cadet programs. But when we look at the young boys and women, the young men and women that participate in cadet programs, and we see the difference in their outcomes, we can see that that's an integration gap. And that's something that we're working to fix in partnership with the Ministry of Education. We've already spoken, for instance, to the private sector to identify schools which are near to them, so that the members who join the cadet program, which is a program in the Ministry of National Security rather than Ministry of Education, but we've already spoken to private sector members to even help us to find ways to incentivize young people to join the cadet program, because we see how different the outcomes are when they embrace discipline and then they go into the classrooms that, that have the tactile sort of training. So I think that the big idea and the big win, I think, will come from integration, and that's what I would push for with this at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Tankita Chance Wilson, she's back on the line, so we're going to ask her to make her introductory comments now. Mrs. Wilson?
Thank you so much. Are you hearing me?
We are. Go ahead.
I hope so. Awesome. All right. So I was speaking to our mandate, our focus, which essentially is to see young people achieve their optimum potential and contribute to the development of their communities and others around them. Our three focus areas are education support, community development, and volunteerism. And we have been working in largely underserved communities. The minister just spoke about private sector companies working with communities that are close to them. And that has been Grace Kennedy's model through Grace and staff, where we center a lot of our attention in communities in and around where Grace Kennedy operates businesses. Now, a key component of our education program is mentorship support. And so the Boys Can mentorship program was, it's very important to us. We saw it as an opportunity to, an important driver really for youth development. And forging partnerships really is very critical in achieving social development goals. And so this forms the basis for engagement by Grace and staff with the British Council in Jamaica on this mentorship, Boys Can mentorship initiative. Both organizations were aligned in our efforts to work with our boys, and to develop the human capital in our schools, through our schools. The Boys Can mentorship program really served as a vehicle in achieving this goal and essentially in improving the life chances of our boys. If Jamaica is to realize Vision 2030 and achieve our sustainable development goals, we really must place emphasis on ensuring that we improve the life chances of our young people, especially our boys. The crime statistics show that males feature more prominently as both perpetrators and victims of crime. So we therefore must really build human capital from the ground up, starting with our boys. We strongly believe that. We must build their resilience, improve communication skills, setting and working towards goals, problem solving. These are all necessary skills for paving a sustainable future for our country. The Boys Can program has done that for the participants in a holistic way.
Thank you very much. There's a little bit of technical difficulties again. But with Tankita Chance Wilson there from the Grace and Staff Community Organization, Staff Development Foundation rather, but she's been exploring some of the areas that she thinks is important, including mentorship for boys, education, a sort of general support for them. That's a major area for the foundation overall. Just want to bring in Damien Campbell here. We've heard some of the ministers talk about, both of the ministers talk about a program going forward, sort of a theoretical versus practical, sort of more hands-on technological education that sort of spans different areas of the sector. So from early childhood, they said, all the way to sort of secondary. Is this the sort of expertise that the British Council, British High Commission could bring?
Right. So basically, as we had mentioned in our values, we're open to the commitment to working with partners. So in areas where the British Council might not have the strongest expertise, we basically facilitate that understanding of what's needed to support the process. So what we're committing to, in addition to the expertise that the British Council would have around engaging young people from all various backgrounds, improving access, means connecting with partners such as the ministry, would be able to guide us as the best approach to ensure that programs are impactful, and also bringing expertise from the UK and within Jamaica from a community development perspective to build out and design a program that's informed by the information that would have been presented by partners in their opening statements.
All right, thanks so much, Damien. I'd also like to bring in here Winsome Gordon of the Jamaica JTEC, Jamaica Tertiary Teaching Council, I'm so sorry, to make some comments in terms of the road ahead.
Hello.
Good
morning,
Doctor.
everyone. This is a special privilege for me to see the boys, to hear the discussion on the boys' education program. Because when we started, it was all about girls' education, but that's not a problem in Jamaica. It's a problem is to get our boys better engaged or usefully engaged in education. I like the discussions I've heard this morning and the focus on the hands-on, the need to integrate the theoretical aspect of education with the technical aspect so that boys can better relate to the literacy that we want to teach them so much, the mathematics, but in a context of production, in a context of industry, and in a context of enterprise. Going forward, I would like to see better cooperation between the productive sector, or if we want to say the private sector, and the education of boys, especially the older boys from age 15 upwards, so that the education system stays relevant, because the industries move quickly and they could move fast, way ahead of the education system. And it's the only way we can stay abreast of changes is to have an integration and a healthy collaboration between industry and the education system. So I like the direction the discussion is taken.
Thank you so much. And we have a couple of officials from the Ministry of Education that we'd like to bring into the discussion as well. We have the Acting Permanent Secretary, Dr. Grace McLean, the Acting Chief Education Officer, Dr. Casson Troop, and Winnie Berry, from the Curriculum Development Unit there at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. I want to bring each of them in terms of commenting on the nature of a program going forward. What would they like to see, or any other general comment they'd like to make, starting with Dr. McLean.
Okay, good afternoon, ministers, ambassador, and other members of the team. I just want to say that our minister has already spoken, Mr. Chair, and we are in support of the perspective that she has indicated, and we will ensure that the team provides the support that is required to the British Council in terms of crafting the program. So it really would not be appropriate for us to put other perspective on the table at this time, as our minister has already spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. McLean. Completely understand. Dr. Troop, I don't know if there is anything you would like to highlight outside of talking about priorities going forward.
Okay, good afternoon to the members of the panel. As my permanent secretary articulated, we stand fully in support of what our minister has expressed this morning into the afternoon. Just wanted to add that we commend the British Council for its continued support of our education program, especially with this added focus on boys' education and, of course, the social enterprise program. These are two very key areas, as you would have heard our minister outlined, and we are ready with respect to our commitment for future success, and we are looking forward as we continue to serve our boys and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Troop. Winnie Berry? Comments outside of priorities are perfectly fine.
Our panelists. I'd just like to support the minister's perspective. It is quite apt the role of technology, of twinning the practical with the theory. It is something, as our permanent secretary has said, that we are supporting, and we will ensure that all the directives and the guidelines given this approach, that all of these will be instituted for the best outcomes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. From the VM group, we have Ms. Clover Moore. She's Assistant Vice President. In terms of what you've heard so far, what is the perspective of the VM group?
Well, we feel that it's really important for us to, just to reaffirm the statement, to infuse the softer skills as a part of the curriculum, just like how you would look at math or English. Because waiting for someone to step into the world of work to teach them is too late. I think as well, what's really key is for us to map a timeline as to how we'll do that. So I've gathered that the minister has already spoken, and our colleagues from the ministry are saying they will work to implement, but I would love for us to, shortly after this, come up with a timeline for how we can actually start the process of integrating it so our kids can benefit. What I'd also want to raise though is, since the impact of COVID, and Michael spoke about how it actually impacted the delivery of the 6-week training program that we did last year. And he spoke about that fatigue, online fatigue, because the kids are also adapting to working in this in the new way of school learning or education. One thing that we've noticed as a VM Foundation is that whereas many organizations are quick to donate a tablet or a device, or we see a program now where kids can get, depending on where the family income is, they can get a discounted tablet for $20,000. What we're not seeing is a way to give the kids access to Wi-Fi. And I think, because that's where I think the great divide is. So I would want to bring in this discussion in light of how we're going to be for the next year or two. How do we find a way to address this gap in terms of kids having access to Wi-Fi so they can better take on this kind of program and benefit from it?
All right, thank you very much, Clover Moore. I think we're almost at the end of the discussion, so it sounds like we are on the way to some sort of agreement, perhaps a memorandum of understanding, to just look at how we can sort of explore and co-design a unified program going forward. Since I have the opportunity, I do want to put the policymakers on the floor just before Minister leaves to ask if that is something that you'd be interested in doing. First Minister Williams and then Minister Samuda, exploring the possibility or the suitability perhaps of co-designing sort of a unified program going forward in the context of all of the concerns that you've raised and in the context of some of the priorities that you have highlighted.
Sure. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information is always open to our private sector entities who have, over the years, had an abiding interest in education to come on board and help us in whatever way they see possible. We ask that they work with us and through us because of our remit for the education sector. We can help them with the program design. We can help to make sure it's implemented through our system. We can help them in terms of teacher training to be able to then continue these programs in the schools. And so we welcome partnerships, and that has been, if you look at the history of education in Jamaica, it has been partnership with the churches, partnership with private sector organizations, partnership with not-for-profit entities as well. And so we welcome the opportunity to be able to work and design such a program going forward.
All right, thank you so much, Minister Williams. Minister Samuda, last comment before we close the discussion. We know, Minister Williams, we know that you have to leave.
Well, I always yield to Minister Williams, but she's right. The spirit of partnership is one that is strong with the Jamaican government, especially in the space of education. but it's also very strong within the national security architecture. The British Council and the British government is a very strong partner of the Jamaican government, and I can tell you from my own experience and what I'm exposed to at the Ministry of National Security, a very good partner for Jamaica's security outcomes. Now, as it relates to that last call from I think this Clover Berry, the need for us to move quickly and to create measurable outcomes is and document them and put them into MOU, something I would support. I think you won't find any objection from us on partnerships, and we look to how we progress. At the end of the day, we all want to progress towards Vision 2030. We all want to tick the boxes associated with the SDGs, because at the end of the day, if we get these things right, we know we will see the quality of life for Jamaicans improve significantly and in a reasonable time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Samuda. I'd like to thank Minister Matthew Samuda there, the Honourable Minister Favour Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, as well as the other officials from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Permanent Secretary Dr. Grace McLean, the Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Casson Troop, and other officials such as Winnie Barry, Ms. Winsome Gordon as well, the High Commissioner to Jamaica, His Excellency Asif Ahmad, Damien Campbell, who is here with me on stage. He's Acting Country Manager of the British Council Jamaica, Ms. Clover Moore, Assistant Vice President at the VM Group, and Tankita Chance Wilson of the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation. We'd like to thank all of them for taking part in this discussion, reaffirming the idea of partnership and also talking about the possibility of the exploration and co-designing of a unified program going forward, and possibilities of perhaps as well signing an MOU that will look at looking at what this program may be like and what areas may be included. So I'd like to thank all of them. So we're going to be going right now to a poll. So those of you who have Zoom, we're going to be launching the poll, and while we're launching the poll and waiting for the results to come in, we are going to be playing a video as well as we set up for our next fireside chat. Thank you everyone who joined us for this round table talk. A lot of progress made this morning, and we'll continue the discussions right after this video plays.
Welcome to Cumberland High School. Never say never, always endeavor. Social enterprise in secondary schools. Take one.
The British Council has been a godsend to Cumberland High School. Certainly the demographic of our students requires that we reach out with all sorts of programs, whether internally or externally. This particular outreach from the British Council is very important for us because it is certainly an avenue for students to build social capital. Many of our students are from disadvantaged homes, non-functioning homes, and certainly this is a big opportunity for students to uplift themselves, to understand how they can be functional in society. 81% of the students who come to Cumberland High School are from Spanish Town and the environs of Spanish Town. The remainder may come from communities adjacent to Cumberland High School and as far as Bull Bay in St. Andrew. The truth is, the majority of the impact will be felt in the communities that the students are mostly from. So as a principal, I've told my teachers, I've told students that the school must be the emblem of influence. So certainly the British Council program will go a far way in impacting the communities from which the students are from.
I want to bring the realness of my journey as someone who has deliberately chosen to be doing this with my life. It's not a case where I couldn't find a job or I happened upon it. It was a calculated decision, and I think that demonstrating that it's important for you to want to be in this thing will allow you to have more long-term success, because that determination that you are making a decided effort to be an entrepreneur is what's going to make the difference when the times get tough.
I learned that you can use your skills to build. It can be a small business, and the more you build that business, it can become a big business, and it can also not only help you, but it can help your community and environment.
Tyrese, based on the social enterprise thing, what we learned about early on, I know some have a good passion of doing hair and nails and all them stuff there. So I would further my business. If I had a business, I would further my business in making beauty salon. Yeah.
Tyrese, what do you think? From when me think from it early on, me think say like the recycled plastic bottles.
Yeah.
You can use them make chairs, pencil cases.
So Matthew, what about you?
Alright, me can use the newspapers like our parents buy.
Yeah.
That won't finish read and put it down one side.
Yeah.
So maybe we can take them and make like flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just the students, but the teachers as well. We are all excited about the new initiative that presents itself in our school. It's new and it provides us an opportunity to showcase our talents. So we have considered 2 projects thus far. One, the main one being a smoothie stall. The other one is really the plastic bottles, based on the fact that there are so many around. We are exploring a number of options. The students are out deciding on what we can do with the plastic bottles.
We have a large demographic of students here who are interested in doing their own business, and certainly guidance and the kind of support will be necessary. So certainly entrepreneurship is a big part of Cumberland High School, but we want to ensure that students get the kind of support necessary for this.
We were all given an ounce of creativity, some people more than an ounce. Find what that is, find how it looks, what it looks like for you to express yourself creatively, and nurture that thing so that you can turn it into something that you would like to see.
From the Cumberland High School, that's a wrap.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the British Council and Victoria Mutual Foundation Social Enterprise in Secondary School 2nd Annual Summit. We're here at our first fireside chat on entrepreneurship, social innovation, and education. My name is Lanisia Rudin, and I have the pleasure of speaking with 4 very impressive panelists who will be sharing their experience, expertise, and knowledge on how social enterprise can be used to promote entrepreneurship, social innovation, and education. So before we go into the discussion, let me introduce you to our panelists. And we're going to start with Mrs. Brittany Singh Williams. Brittany Singh Williams, founder of Spark Education and the Pod School. She's an edupreneur with a unique combination of expertise in the areas of education consultancy, academic coaching, curriculum development, and leadership development. She's passionate about seeing Caribbean children become future leaders of innovation and economic growth. Brittany She recently served as an advisor to the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and curator of the Global Shapers Kingston Hub. Increasingly, her work in schools in both Jamaica and Thailand focused primarily on the development of organizational structures and human change elements to begin the transformation process of schools. Brittany holds a BSc in Elementary Education and Special Education and a Master of Science in Global and International Education at Drexel University and a Microsoft Teacher Trainer certification. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you.
We also have Ms. Charmaine Brim. Ms. Charmaine Brim is employed as a technical specialist with portfolio responsibility for social economic development at the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the agency of government leading the process of policy formulation on economic, social, and environmental issues, and external cooperation management. She holds an MBA from the University of Leicester, England, and a BSc with honors in public administration and a minor in political science from the University of the West Indies. Ms. Brim has over 8 years of extensive experience in areas such as strategic planning, research, program design and development, and she leads the charge for coordinating and implementing the strategic policy activities regarding social value creation, as laid out in the government's MSME and entrepreneurship policy, as well as socio-economic initiatives under the Community Renewal Program. She's also involved in the identification of strategic opportunities for Jamaica that will advance relevant policy and/or legislative development within her work remit. She's had many sector wins, especially in the social enterprise sectors, and some of them include successful advocacy for the inclusion of social enterprises in the MSME and entrepreneurship policy, which Cabinet approved in 2018. She's also a director of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, Advisory Board of Councillors, the chairperson for the Social Enterprise Working Group, which is a subgroup of the National Policy Implementation Committee, and member of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, the core group within the PIOG. She's also a Justice of the Peace for the Parish of St. Andrew, and she has actually received awards for her contribution to the development of social enterprise sector in Jamaica. Welcome, Shireen. We have with us also Ms. Leonie Lawrence. Now, Leonie is a trained curriculum e-learning expert and international STEM educator with a social mission to reinvent the way people learn. Through creativity, innovation, and technology, she arms individuals and businesses with strategies to create interactive educational content that truly engage learners. Having taught in an international school and participated in numerous global professional development programs, she models best practices in education by supporting educators with revamping their classroom delivery. By viewing learning through the eyes of her learners, she commits to presenting content in the most compelling way possible, often through simulations, 3D technology, kinesthetic teaching aids, and other educational technological tools. Leonie is currently a member of the NSTA and has served in the capacity of robotics instructor and faculty advisor. She is certified by the Florida Department of Education and holds a Master's of Education in Instructional Design and Technology. Welcome, Leonie. And finally, we have Mr. Marlon Johnson. Marlon Johnson, he was born in the parish of Manchester, and then he moved to, to St. Catherine, right? Where he developed a love for geography, and we're going to see how that unfolds. He became the head boy of the school, and he also founded the first Interact Club, where he served as a president. So after St. Catherine High, he moved on to the University of the West Indies and pursued a degree in geography, which he earned and graduated with second-class honors. During his graduate studies, through his mentor, Mr. Winston Davis, he was privileged to earn some work experience in academic administration and recruiting for the university. After completing his undergraduate studies, he enrolled in a postgraduate diploma on population and development, and he completed that in 2007. Immediately after, he commenced a master in sociology with concentration on anthropology. During those years, he remained a full-time employee of the university as a recruiting officer, which gave him the privilege of making presentations at various academic institutions across the Caribbean. In 2010, Mr. Johnson decided that he wanted to experience academic administration from another perspective, and that is in the form of TVET. And that is when he applied to be the registrar at the Jamaica German Automotive School, and he started working with Heart Trust NTA in April in 2001. In December 2015, he was transferred to the Business Development and Workforce Solutions Department as an Industry Liaison Officer. And following that, he was promoted to the position of Workforce Manager. He also excelled in the position, and he became the acting director for the Business Development Workforce Solutions Department, and now he is the Senior Programs Director for the now merged Heart Trust NSTA, or Heart NSTA Trust. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. So I did say before that the panelists are very impressive, and you'd have heard that from their profiles. So I want to start by giving each panelist the opportunity to share briefly, based on their experience and your expertise, and also your knowledge, some initial thoughts on how the link that exists between entrepreneurship, social innovation, and education. Is there an actual link? Okay. Can you go ahead? Yes, you can go ahead, Brittany.
So to me, social innovation uses insight, creativity, and imagination, those specific skills, to really solve problems for tomorrow, to solve social problems and to uplift people. And those are specific skills that should be emphasized and developed in our education system. As we speak about the future of education and actually how we transform education now in this season, there's a lot of talk about the 4 C's, the critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. But there's just so much more to that. It's really about developing the whole person, the whole mindset, to prepare them to become those problem solvers that we want to see in the future. And my thoughts as we discuss it today is, I believe that the appropriate systems still need to be put in place through our policymakers to measure success in a way that emphasizes social enterprises and social innovation, because we don't necessarily, we look a lot at the children's grades versus looking at what it is that they can contribute in a real way to society. What are their actual skills? So looking more at outcomes of grades versus the impact on society. And that's something that I would love for us to even, dive into today. So there is a space for it because the skills needed for social innovation are what children are learning. But are we actually learning those skills in real terms?
Okay, thank you very much, Brittany.
Well, Brittany said it quite well. There is this link, direct link among all three variables. We ought to see them as an ecosystem. So we, in the school system, problem solve, because entrepreneurship really is identifying and solving a problem, a need, seeing a need and solving that need, whether it be socially or environmentally as you look at that kind of enterprise. So we ought to create an environment in the school system that teaches our participants to identify a particular problem and then come up with a solution. And sometimes this solution is called innovation in many instances, but it's disruptive. And when you are disruptive in school, we know what happened. But we ought to foster an environment that persons, a child, a pupil can come to you as a teacher with a very disruptive thought that may change the entire space. So we need to foster that kind of environment. But there is a direct link among all three variables.
Okay, great.
For me, I think about it from the perspective of human self-advancement, It's a human right for us to have the right to work or meaningful work. And so when we start thinking about entrepreneurship as a value, how do I create value for others, how do I create value for myself, then it becomes a social mission. And I think once we start looking at entrepreneurship as this social mission, then we can use like curriculum and education to kind of drive creativity, drive innovation. And I can think of a prime example right now. I mean, I'm the co-founder of an entity known as the Pod School. And what we do, we empower students to start thinking about problems that, are affecting us currently. We have urbanization, the rapid shifts in technology, there's climate change. And so we give them that opportunity to start thinking about how can I problem solve in a way that impacts my community and the world in general. And so we kind of make them that agent of change, giving them that forum to basically put forth their ideas. So all of them are connected in a sense. And as I did say, we need to start looking at entrepreneurship as a social mission.
Okay, for me, I do think that there is a link between all three. Just to stretch it a little bit more in terms of social innovation, we're really talking about the development and deployment of some particular solutions that are targeted to address certain social, cultural, or environmental issues. So innovation in itself allows you to look at several solutions, of which social enterprises is actually one. I mean, when we think of how we define social enterprise, we're talking about entities that has a mission. So they are mission driven to address some kind of economic, environmental, cultural issue. But of course, at the heart of it as a problem solver is looking at a business model, a particular business model that when we think about social entrepreneurs, that is one of the models that they can use. In terms of its connection to education, just the innovative aspect of it allows our youth, just by virtue of who they are, to be able to explore two particular things. One, to look at the socioeconomic environment within which they exist and start to really think through what are some of those solutions that I can come up with to address certain issues, whether it is in my school or my immediate space, and then also allowing them to explore, to unearth that level of creativity towards creating that solution. So I think that all three connects, and the beauty about innovation is that it is unending in the sense that it's not just addressing one issue, but it allows you to explore. And I think it's important for us to allow our students to start thinking in that way and just pushing them a little bit more as it relates to becoming contributors to their environments.
So we've heard all four panelists have agreed that there's definitely a link among all three. Now, the British Council, over the past few years, they have been linking these three they have been linking these three through their social enterprise in secondary school programs. Now, I want to throw a question at you, Charmaine, as a social enterprise expert, someone who is currently working towards the policy development for the social enterprise sector. How can social enterprises contribute or promote entrepreneurship in Jamaica?
Okay, so it ties back again. So let me say it this way. First of all, the relevance and importance of ensuring that there's an enabling environment to foster the work within the social enterprise ecosystem is important. So as an entrepreneur, when you talk about social enterprises, when you just look at the myriad of issues that may be even outside of the purview of government to solve, what social enterprise does is to provide a model that can be adopted to address some of these issues. And then in and of itself, when you're talking about a social entrepreneur that is looking, they can use a particular model. I think the difference here with the social enterprise model is that it is mission driven and not necessarily driven by you having to respond to shareholders. So what you use, for those who might establish a social enterprise that is profit, has a focus in terms of getting profit, meaning one of the issues social enterprises face right now is the issue of access to capital. We don't want to continue to promote a system where it's constant donations that persons are relying on. So you will have some social enterprises that will want to attract equity investment, but we want to ensure that when that investment is attracted, it is not going to cause the enterprise to lose ownership, because then that could result in a shift in a mission, in the mission itself. So as a social entrepreneur who will use the social enterprise model, it gives them that ability to maintain the ownership and to continue to focus using a business model that allows constant income generation to continue your mission. So that is actually very important, so that, you know, oftentimes when we hear social attached to entrepreneurship or social enterprise, we tend to think only in terms of non-profit, or we think that this is just an idea that, you know, some persons are interested in philanthropic, and so, you know, it's kind of like putting your hand out there begging. But it's really, it is mission focused, but it is also driven by a particular vision that you want to sustain. And so as social entrepreneurs look to utilize the social enterprise model, it's for them to understand that, or for others to understand that when we talk about these things, we're talking about the ability of the entrepreneur to scale up their businesses. They want to be able to access certain kind of capacity support. They want to be able to know that they can access the added income that they need. But it is using a model, just like any other business, that is going to be focused on sustainability, but you're doing it using a model that allows you to continue your work without the lack or absence of that constant income generation. So that's one point in which I'll look at it. And then in terms of from a policy perspective, it is very important that, especially when we're talking about going to like private sector groups, private sectors and other actors in the space wants to know that there is government focus or backing as it relates to an emerging sector, which is what social enterprise is right now for Jamaica. And so having that legal framework in place is very important. Having a legal status in place is very important to give the sector the recognition that it needs, and therefore will allow the social entrepreneur to be able to operate in that space amongst any other MSMEs, but knowing that there is a framework in place that defines the sector, so that it can be recognized. You know, we don't want a sector where everybody can just come in and say, oh, I'm doing this social good because you want to take advantage of certain benefits. So the legal framework will provide the definition, it will provide some particular criteria that allows you to recognize what the sector is, or who a social entrepreneur or somebody who has established a social enterprise is, and then of course provide the kind of the support in order to access some of the other benefits that the sector will offer.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, right. So I want to pose a similar question to Brittany and Leonie. So you both are social innovators, and you mentioned earlier, Brittany, that there's still a lot more to do in Jamaica to promote social innovation. So how do you think, as social innovators yourself, you've both co-founded a school where you're practicing and you're enforcing this from a very early age, right? How can social enterprise promote social innovation in Jamaica from your perspective?
Wow. Let me start by saying, we take into consideration the community strengthening approach. Like, we're looking for opportunities to strengthen our community, people in the community. We're looking for opportunities to solve a problem. So when we started this school, we're thinking about, okay, there's an issue immediately with the pandemic. People are trying to navigate what school will look like, and with technology advancement, how would that impact learning? And so, we came up with this idea of bringing the learning to the homes and personalizing the learning, but also making sure that that's happening in a safe space. So I think when it comes to innovation per se in social enterprise, it basically encourages design thinking. So we're thinking creatively outside the box, and we're also, looking at opportunities where we can pounce on those opportunities and make a change. And the thing with being innovative is that you're always coming up with these products or services or solutions that are very novel. So a lot of people wouldn't think about them, but once you put it into perspective, they then recognize and appreciate that it is solving a problem that they didn't know they had. So I think that's the approach, if I'm leaving anything out, Brittany.
Yeah, and just to continue on that, being pioneers in a space also requires a lot of unschooling, because people expect things to be the same. And it's funny, like even during the pandemic, you'd hear people like, I can't wait for things to go back the same. And for us, we're like, why would you ever want things to go back the same? This is the perfect opportunity to start thinking about what your children can achieve, what their real potential is, and how to really pour to them. So we have spent countless hours, even with our existing clients, just saying, we promise you that you don't need to go back to how things were. You don't need a traditional system. Look how your child is thriving right now by just us customizing for them specifically. So I think that with social enterprises, you always have to stand firm to the mission, continuing to be mission focused, because it can get very difficult, especially when you're also in the season of convincing people that this is something that can really empower them and better their lives.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for that. And I like how you actually shared the internal research and work that you have done towards this. Okay. All right, so I'm going to jump to Marlon. Now, you have many years working within Heart Trust, NT, or Heart NSTA Trust now, as the acting director for the Business Development and Workforce Solutions. Now, what are some of the benefits that you saw from promoting entrepreneurship in education?
That's a very, very, I always love that question. The last time I checked, there are two ways to earn. Salary, and I'm salaried, and I don't believe in salary, let's put it out there. Salary and profits. Two ways to earn. Now, when you're salaried, when you're a salaried employee, your efforts, no matter how hard you work, nights, 24 hours a day, your income remains the same. When you're an entrepreneur or self-employed, and I think we ought to make that distinction. There's a difference between an entrepreneur and those who are self-employed, and we can go to that eventually. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're self-employed, your efforts determine your rewards. And it's critical for us to let our students understand that decent work don't only mean what I look like in a tie and a jacket and whatever it is. Decent work also is going out there, seeing a problem, solving that problem, and solving that problem can give you a lot of rewards. And we ought to foster that kind of environment. So in working in HEART, currently many persons don't know, but the NSTA Trust, HEART NSTA Trust, the revised HEART NSTA Trust, we do provide grants for MSMEs. And we're moving towards looking at some of these social enterprise, because we normally give these grants to provide these grants to mainstream enterprise. The enterprise whose their focus, because that's the difference, whose their focus is the bottom line. We ought to now look at the social enterprise focus, where they're looking at something else, at solving an environmental or a social need. So we may look in that environment, but it's very critical. All our programs in HEART, every single program in HEART, automotive, whatever you do in HEART, there's an on-job component to it. Because we want all of our participants to understand that you can empower yourself and go out there. As a matter of fact, every year, the HEART NSTA Trust, we provide up to 100 of our participants, our trainees, with grants towards stimulating their innovative business, whatever kind of business that may be. So as a trust, we and it's even in our act, in the HEART Act of 1982, it's part of our responsibility to stimulate entrepreneurship, and more so social entrepreneurship, because when I think about it, social entrepreneurship, it really feeds directly into what we do. We are the Human Capital Development Agency, and if you can develop an enterprise that you're teaching persons to solve a problem, persons can learn, earn, and they can even be certified. So it's very important for us to teach persons entrepreneurship and let them understand how it works. And we can, like I said earlier, we can go into the definition of a self-employed person different from that of an entrepreneur.
All right, thank you so much for that. We have a question coming from Dr. Shetty, and please feel free, anyone, to answer. And Dr. Shetty is asking, how can we craft an intervention for inner city communities using select interventions that work to get a greater combined impact to lift the whole community at risk? Do you want me to read that again for you? How can we craft an intervention for inner city communities using select interventions that work to get a greater combined impact to lift the whole community at risk?
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, go ahead.
So at the PIOJ, I'm assigned to the Community Renewal Program. Now, one of our primary mandate is to coordinate initiatives for service delivery. Now, the benefit of coordination is that when you're planning or looking to design an intervention, it's very important that you follow some particular steps. One, you need to know what is the particular issue that you're addressing in that community. You need to ensure you're doing your assessment of that community, and you have to do that in tandem with the community that you're seeking to go and put this intervention in. We want to move away from where we carry solutions to communities that may not work because we didn't involve them in the first place. But the second advantage of a coordination process, so like what we do at the PIOJ, the Community Renewal Program established an interagency mechanism which is comprised of participants from government, private sector, NGO, international development partners, civil society groups. The interagency provides a forum where stakeholders can come together to plan and develop interventions for implementation in the community. Now, when you use a coordinating approach, what it allows in planning, the planning process, is that you are recognizing who are the other stakeholders in the space that has some particular expertise to bring to address the issue that you're speaking about. So that when you're designing this intervention now, and you might look at an intervention that says, you know what, we want to address the issue of youth involvement in the community development process. We're going to need HEART to come on board in terms of administering some entrepreneurship training, but giving certification. We are going to need, like a Dr. Shetty, who has the expertise in psychology, because we want to look at how we can impact mindsets and behaviors. So what I would say is designing an intervention using a coordinating approach that allows you to identify the particular stakeholders that has expertise. It also allows you to use your resources more efficiently. So you are now targeting your resources in a more specific way. And in that environment, you're talking about social innovation, etc., it also allows that level of creativity and newness to come. Now, if you have done all of that, and those things, they're doing your problem tree analysis, all of these things to unearth the issues, then now that data, program design must be driven by data. So once you have done that, that data will now inform your design and how you're going to implement, and then you can utilize that now to go and implement that particular intervention.
Okay, well said. Thank you, Charmaine. Is there anyone else? Brittany?
Having worked in the corporate NGO space, you will find that when you go into various communities, one foundation would have come and done something, another foundation comes and does another thing, and unfortunately, I don't find that there is one solid combined place that people can come to say, okay, this community has these specific needs for NGOs or people who are interested in to come and help them. So all of the support is kind of, you know, you come, you leave, and then that's it, and then it's not really sustainable. So I think that on a policy level, we need to have something in place for community development that really has proper structures of, you know, M&E, how are you going to measure this? You know, the same data conversation. I find that in Jamaica, we have so much data, but we're not actually using it in a sustainable and real tangible way that really impacts people long term. It's always very one-off. You know, one day there's something, the next day the child is back to the same issue in the community. So I think we need some more policy. I always talk about policy that, you know, they're not proper structures and systems in place, and it comes back to how we're even to educating our children. Everybody is just a one-man show, and everybody wants the recognition. So one foundation will go in because they want to put up their banners, and we're not really doing the thing for the people and making it sustainable. So we need to have real conversations about the heart behind why we're doing things.
No pun intended, but from the Heart and Estate Trust perspective, it's critical for us to make note in answering that question of the whole program. And the whole program, a significant component of the whole program is to meet that very need. To give youth, particularly 17 to, let's say, 35, using the LEGS approach, learn, earn, give, save approach, to acquire skills, new skills, to learn saving, how saving is important. And as we roll out some more, and we're even thinking of adding a core of entrepreneurs, because as you know, that the whole program, there are a number of cores. So we want to have an entrepreneurship core where we go into communities and we train them in entrepreneurship and give them some amount of seed funding to stimulate and hand-holding, because sometimes when you train persons and you say go out there, but the hand-holding component, so even when we give our grants to prospects, we hold their hand for 24 months and give them training and ensure that their taxes are done. And because entrepreneurship is not just what you see. There are a number of components involved in entrepreneurship, but it's critical for us to hold their hands. The incubation period, it's called in many instances, to hold the person's hands and the firm hand throughout that embryonic period.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I hope that you would have gotten the answer, Dr. Shetty. So just to kind of summarize what everyone has said, so it's collaboration with all the stakeholders who are going to actually work to solve the problem. It's involving the community, so it's not taking the program to the community, but it's actually working with the community to decipher what the problem is. It's policies, as Brittany mentioned, and also finding or developing this overarching body that will serve communities And then Marlon mentioned programs that already exist through HEART, such as the HOPE programs, that are actually tackling this same need that you've asked in your question. So thank you very much for answering the question. Now, we're coming to the end of this segment, but I do want to ask another question of you. So we're talking about entrepreneurship, social innovation, and education. What would you say are some skills that need to be taught to prepare students for the evolving work of world? And how do you actually see these skills or these skills linked to what you know has been taught in a social enterprise program, whether it be the British Council Social Enterprise Program or it could be an enterprise program of your organization?
You know, I often hear the term 21st century skills, and I'm like, can we stop just saying that? You know, be specific. What are these skills you're talking about? When we look at social enterprises, the reason why they're able to thrive is because they have to develop resilience, they have to be creative, they have to think on the spot, and they have to be constantly problem solving. In order for them to do that, they have to learn digital literacy, communication, creativity, collaboration, how to pitch their ideas. So it's all of these skill sets coming into play. And it's so interesting because financial literacy, which is such a heavy component, especially in entrepreneurship, is not taught in school unless you're doing accounting. And I find that so interesting because how are we pushing that program in our school? And that's a conversation Brittany and I have been having about Pod School. How do we introduce financial literacy? I mean, in a class that I taught the other day, the students were asking about taxes. How do we file taxes? We have no idea. Nobody teaches us those things. How do we, invest in land? And what I had to do was bring in someone from a financial institution to answer these questions, and they were so invested in it. So we have to start thinking about these real skills when we talk about 21st century skills and be very specific about them. What are these skills? How are they going to be taught? Because they can't be taught in isolation either. They have to relate to a particular situation, apply to a context. So yeah, those are some of the skills that I can think of for now.
To what Leonie said, there are two specific ones that I've observed in just this season with the Pod School that I think are critical. The first one is social emotional learning. We have to understand that our young people already have mental health navigating more than what we would have as children. Very conscious about how they are processing their feelings, how they are processing relationships, and tie that to the next skill of communication. The heightened use of technology. I find that many students don't even know how to have a conversation with somebody beside them anymore because they're always playing or talking to them, on their games. And so I think those are two important aspects that we need to look at as we equip our young people, because we assume that in conversation at home or at school with our young people that they're okay and they're not okay, and they also don't know how to express that in a healthy way. And hence in our society today we see people fighting and killing over a grain of rice. So these are important things.
Add to what she said, because two things that came to mind in terms of skill set or something that should be introduced is first that whole issue of psychosocial, understanding your mindset, understanding how to deal with, because when you explore or you enter into the social entrepreneurship world, the reality is that, when you're talking about business or anything, you're going to come upon challenges. You're going to come upon roadblocks. And sometimes we don't know how to navigate certain things, especially certain people issues, or to deal with how the impact of certain things on you as an individual. So that whole psychosocial component is something that I think is very important and should be introduced and taught within the education system, starting from even our primary coming right up, because this is, especially our children nowadays are dealing with some issues that when we were growing up, we didn't have to deal with that. So psychosocial exposure to that whole issue of psychosocial development. The second thing is I'm thinking about social entrepreneurs or persons who will establish social enterprises, the whole issue of measurement of the value that you're creating. So persons might be familiar with the old SROI, social return on investment. I think that is something that must be taught as well at this point, especially if you're teaching about social enterprises or social entrepreneurship, because you must be able, just like with any other normal business that looks at how much profit am I making, you want to be able to also look at the return on your investment and as it relates to the mission, you know. So those are two other skill sets that I think should be introduced at the education level.
It's important. There are three skills I want to be introduced. Branding. I think branding is very important, and branding comes in different facets. A student needs to understand, particularly in this space now, in the new world, that branding of yourself is critical. So even if you create an enterprise, it's not independent of the enterprise. So your branding is important. So what you post on an Instagram or on a Facebook, because in this new age, you are what you put out there, and person will judge you based on that. So it's important that we teach branding, and you ought to start the branding, because unlike, in my time, in my time in high school and university, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have a Facebook. So we could have made mistakes, and it's not documented. Now everything is documented. So branding, I think, is a critical skill to understand from as early as humanly possible. Problem solving. We ought to teach them to first identify a problem and solve it. The man who can do that, he can earn millions and solve millions out there. And finally, emotional intelligence. You made mention of that. But emotional intelligence is critical in any space at all, because particularly in Jamaica, you ought to separate the problem from the individual, and it happens in any space at all. So those are the three skill set, and I think it's critical for our students to learn, particularly in this new age and in this new space.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are so many skills that you've shared. You've shared resilience, creativity, collaboration, financial literacy, social and emotional learning or emotional intelligence, measurement of the value that is being created, branding, and problem solving. And basically, you've just highlighted the last thing that we wanted to talk about. How does problem solving drive innovation? But you've mentioned that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just to share some parting words for the persons who are listening, who are viewing. How are you, or how have you actually been using your social innovation to solve problems, and any tips that you would give to persons who are actually looking to maybe start becoming more entrepreneurial or becoming more innovative, whether it's educators or students. Any parting words for persons who might be listening?
I would say, end of your question, for those who are considering stepping out and making an impact, is to do the work on yourself first, because we touched on that a lot. It takes so much out of you that you don't really expect, and people will challenge you every day. Challenges will come up, and you need to know how to navigate them in a way that really speaks to who you are. So I would say the first line of work that you need to do is the work on you, so that you can be very sure on your mission, and also to create that board of advisors around you. So when the things get difficult, you have those trusted people that you can say, this is what's going on. Am I remaining true to what I set out to do? And how can I get back on track? So I think that is very important. And I think both Leonie and I touched on the first part of your question a lot. We are solving the problem of helping parents educate their children, but doing it in a way that helps them to reframe the possibilities of education. And for me personally, I am doing a lot of academic coaching, so helping parents to prepare their children to thrive in whatever education space they're in, and that is looking at how do I take notes, how do I plan my day. You'd be surprised how much times people tell their children to study and the child has no idea what that means. So I am working in that space and enjoying it very much. So.
Definitely say learn how to leverage the resources that you have access to. Plenty of times when I've started an enterprise, it's often I become so overwhelmed because I'm thinking I have to find the resources. I don't have the finances. I don't know who to consult with. But there's so many people in your space that you can just pose the idea to. You know, sell your vision. You also have to know how to sell the idea in order for you to get a buy-in. So be sure about your idea, say it over and over until you're sure about what it is you're offering and what it is, how it would benefit the parties involved, and just leverage the resources around you. There's so many people who are willing to help. It's just that I think the issue is that we don't know where those resources are. We don't know how accessible they are. But once you do our research and just try to reach out and network, I'm sure, you know, as Brittany said, the possibilities are endless. So as I said again, just rely on the resources around you. Ask questions, communicate, network, and those will work in your favor.
And I just add to that by saying, which kind of builds on what she's saying, do your research, know the environment around you, and therefore how you're going to navigate that environment. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Help is out there. Don't be afraid of hearing no. You know, don't let no deter you. But, you know, as was said before, you know, if you're focused on your vision, your mission, you know, you're driven by that passion, you know, so just do your research. You want to set up support structures around you, you know, that includes people that you know that can probably mentor you, persons who have some experience or greater knowledge in the area that you want to pursue, and don't be afraid to step out of the box. You know, tradition tends to want to lock us in some way because it provides a safe net. But if we're innovating, we have to be willing to step outside of the box. So don't be afraid to step outside of the box and believe in yourself. Above all, believe in yourself. And if you fall 7 times, the Bible says the righteous falls 7 times, but he gets up. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you fall, it doesn't mean you fail. You only fail when you have given up.
One of the beauties about living in Jamaica is the fact that there are many problems to be solved. And it's just for us, and it's an opportunity. It's really your perspective and your focus. So and particularly in a pandemic like now, we ought to, my parting words is that there are a lot of issues out there, and students leaving university, leaving high schools, find solutions, innovative solutions to these problems, and source and leverage, because there are a lot of monies out there that you can get to leverage your idea and to monetize your idea. So just ideate, look out there and see what are the problems, and some of the examples are in first world. So you can even Google or YouTube. I was talking this morning to somebody that YouTube maybe is the biggest university now. Anything you want to learn, go on YouTube. It's a beautiful time to be young and to be living. So just go, believe in yourself, ideate, think about the problem, solve it, and believe me, the world is your oyster.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, Leonie, Charmaine, Marlon. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise with everyone. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it from the experts themselves. They have shared the link between entrepreneurship, social innovation, and education. And what we need to do now is to learn how to implement and enable them so that we can promote and drive social change here in Jamaica and beyond. Thank you.
social enterprise trending, real number one business trending, social enterprise trending, real number one business trending.
I am Naoka Williams, head girl of the Holland High School. Providentia Dei nos providebit. The providence of God will provide for us. So guys, guess what? The Social Enterprise Project is here.
It is really a government-leased school. The Catholic Church is in charge of the governance. That's the engine.
Tell me about that.
Yes, it is really an artifact that was discovered while the school was being constructed.
And the crest?
So it is now a part of our crest.
Awesome.
And it really speaks to the engine of success. So you'll see on campus where we promote student success, and really we are operating under a theme this year, fueling the engine of academic and professional success for all.
Mommy.
Yes, Sean.
Good evening.
Good evening, love.
Mommy, you know I got a homework, but guess what? I don't know what to do.
What is the homework about?
Social enterprise.
Social enterprise. Nadine.
Yes, mommy.
You remember social enterprise?
Yes, you know. We can't help you. Mommy, can we help her now? I turn the place. I turn the place. We think start so we not no complain. Improve the community. I turn the place. I turn the place. We think start so we not no complain. Improve the community. I turn the place. I turn the place.
I remember you're into business not just for profit but for purpose. So you should be able to pitch your purpose to say, this is what we are about.
Our school has been doing tremendously well over the last 3 years in Cape Entrepreneurship. 2 years ago, we were placed first and third in the Caribbean and first and second in Jamaica. And just last year, we got 6 places in the top 10 in the Caribbean and the same in Jamaica. This social enterprise project will add a new dimension to our program and will add excitement to our already excited students.
Well, if you're going to do a social enterprise business, what would you do?
I would start a baking business.
Well, that sounds nice.
What would you do?
Maybe I have a junkyard sale or jerk and so.
Well, mostly I would publish a book. I love to write.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I would rather to bake, because you can bake it and you could call in people to help out and teach them how to
have a
something.
bake sale.
Yeah, but what also would you put that to?
I put it towards the homeless or bad roads also.
The enterprise is here and I'm really excited for this project. What do you guys think about it?
Well, it's very acceptable and very good to do because it helps students to think about things that they would like to do and help other children if they want to join, and they actually help the community around them.
Some of the things that we're considering is basically building on our core values. Some of them include love, respect, loyalty. All right, so what we're trying to do is to ensure that our students not only leave here academically inclined, but also they develop certain social skills which will help them to function properly in the work world. Another thing that we are planning to do is we're planning to make placemats so that we're in the resort area so that we can sell these to not just our homeowners, but we can also market these to hotels.
We hope to alleviate some of the problems that we're having in our community. Our school is located in Zion, Martha Brae, which is an informal settlement with several persons who are uneducated, high school dropouts, who loiter and so on. So we're trying to help with educating these people, allowing them to gain a skill. Currently our school is very rigorously engaged with the NCTVET programs, and so we hope to use some of the proceeds to help the young men in our community who have been disenfranchised in one way or another. We also hope to use some of the proceeds from our program to help some of our students who were less fortunate than the others, who they might be on the PATH program, but they still might need additional help with school books and so on, and that's one area we're looking into.
This social enterprise will assist the school in its mandate to solve some of the social ills that we would have identified in the immediate community. And so it's an opportunity to get students involved, to brainstorm business ideas, to seek to implement those ideas, and to see how best they can provide financing in order to satisfy or assist in solving some of the social problems. And so we have dropouts in the community. We would have started some years ago to provide training for these persons in skills. And so this social entrepreneurship idea will also fuel that program that we have at school.
Social enterprise trending, real number one business trending. Social enterprise trending, real number one business trending.
Create, innovate and perform. Website, our new place like a storm. Then the app, the 360 cycle.
It's a one on a motorcycle. I turn the place. I turn the place. We things are tough, we not no complain. Improve the community. I turn the place. I turn the place.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, I'm Lenissy Roden, and I am coordinating our second fireside chat here at the British Council and Victoria Mutual Foundation Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools Second Annual Summit. For our second fireside chat, we have another group of expert panelists who are going to be sharing with us on social enterprise as an economic driver. Now, before we go into the discussion, I just want to briefly introduce the panelists that we have here. We have Mr. Blake Widmer. So Blake was born in West Lafayette, Indiana in the USA, and he grew up in a diverse community from which his interest to travel abroad and interact with other cultures was influenced. After graduating with a BSc in accounting and finance from Purdue University, he worked in corporate consulting before moving to Jamaica and serving as a missionary with Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf, where he met the love of his life, Tashai. They have been married for 10 years and enjoy traveling, reading, and brainstorming ideas on thriving community. Together with their mission team, they founded Harvest Call Jamaica in 2013, a registered charitable organization, and then in 2015, they started its gospel-driven social enterprise, Deaf Can Coffee. Welcome, Blake. We also have Mr. Andre Robb. So Andre Robb is a social policy specialist turned entrepreneur with a leaning towards socially minded ventures. Andre is currently building Will and Tomorrow, previously launched Driving Change Academy Limited, was a partner in Icon Media, and still runs Brata Box and Company. He has benefited from the generous contributions of business support programs from the Jamaica Business Development Corporation and the U.S. State Department's Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative, WILI. Welcome, Andre.
Thanks, Vanessa.
We also have with us Dr. Kadamwe Knife. Dr. Knife holds a PhD in Sustainable Development and an MSc in Economics. He is a lecturer and researcher in the Mona School of Business and Management at the University of the West Indies, where he is also the director for the Center for Entrepreneurship, Thinking and Practice. His areas of research are entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and strategic planning for sustainable development. His research has informed the development of MSME and entrepreneurship policies in Jamaica, as well as several international, national, and sectoral strategic plans and programs for sustainable community development within Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. He has also developed numerous workshops and capacity building programs, strategic plans, business models, and business plans, M&E and tracer systems for state, private sector, public sector, social sector organizations, within Jamaica and across the regions, with the objective of empowering people and communities to empower themselves. Welcome, Dr. Naif. Okay. And our final panelist is Mr. Alan Bernard. Now, Alan Bernard, he's a consultant with the return on investment consulting firms. He's also a pioneer in his field and has contributed to many of the social development and sustainable programs that we know have been executed in Jamaica. And Alan will share more about that when we get to him. So, gentlemen, we want to begin with you briefly sharing your thoughts on how social enterprise can drive the economy and what kind of supportive framework, whether legislative or otherwise, are needed to do so. Right? So, shall we start with you, Andre?
I thought I asked you not to start with me, but it's fine. Afternoon, everybody. No, it's fine. I've been thinking about it since asked to be on the panel, which I'm very happy to be. And the thoughts that I'm having right now is that with social entrepreneurship, in my experience, it's allowing me to think of being an entrepreneur in a way that is not just purely driven by the capitalistic greed that we see replicated on TV and that we might have been taught. So the fact that it allows me to interpret my calling to be an entrepreneur in that way, it then gives me the basis for how it is that I'm going to be creating the businesses that I run, and how in creating the businesses that I run, I'm not only looking for them to be profitable money-making ventures, but they're also ventures that don't do harm at the end of the day. And I feel as though we need a lot of that in Jamaica. We need people who are motivated not to do harm, because we're seeing so much harm in our society. And we know that business is a very powerful thing. Not only does it provide for people's needs, but it gives you power in terms of a voice and a platform, as evidenced by my sitting here today. So it's in my mind, the fact that we have social entrepreneurship as a model that we can fit people who are business-minded into, it allows us to merge both the ability to put economic drivers in place and cause people to make money and for the basic needs of life to be met, but also doing it from a perspective of not intending not to do any net harm. And I believe that those things merged together will only lead to the kind of growth and long-term well-being of our society.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Nay?
All right, this must realize that social entrepreneurship is really not necessarily a new concept, but new words. You know what I mean? Once you have persons who are disenfranchised and they're really trying to improve quality of lives, they always have that kind of social mission. The question is whether you sustain it through an enterprise activity or sustain it through granting or through begging or a mix of all of those components. So it is always there. So I think that it is genetic in terms of the Jamaican and the Caribbean, the wider Caribbean population. We're always on that kind of mission. Now, if you think about what economics is, you measure economic either through the expenditure approach or through an output approach. You look at a social enterprise. Once you put money in the social sector, it's an expenditure. Yes, whether it be the household that spend it, whether it be the social entrepreneur, you call the investor spending it, whether the government spending $60 billion on a social sector program. So the social mission always causes an injection, and injection means it's going to grow the economy. More importantly though, is that social enterprises, because they are located in close proximity to the people they are trying to benefit, it does what we call it endogenizes growth. It means it allows the benefits to go directly to the targeted beneficiaries, so there is no need for a trickle-down model. So there's the kind of model they want if you want to create what's called systemic changes. So the social enterprise will be the way to move. And if you know what is happening now in the pandemic, you realize that even traditional for-profit organizations are emphasizing their social mission. state organizations that were designed with a social mission like a HEART, NTA, or a NHT. You see the state drawing on those sources to support what is going to happen now. So it even underscores the importance of a social enterprise, because it means that if you're going to create changes post the pandemic, you want to empower community groups to empower themselves in a sustainable way without depending upon the states. You want to empower individuals as well to empower themselves without depending upon the state. So whether it be a social enterprise, you're going to find more and more that going forward in Jamaica and across the globe, companies will have to start to shift their business model to incorporate more of the social mission. The generation of youths today who are being born, these are social entrepreneurs. And if you look at what you call the millennial kids or the indigo children, they have a global perspective. Them idea about equity and social justice is very different from those who are born in the analog age, who have all those racial discriminatory kind of approach. Those things don't exist anymore. So they have a kind of global view. So is that reality now? So if you're not going to utilize that kind of strategy, you find that even a business will grow. Not emphasizing a social mission can actually limit the growth of your company. And many big organizations globally are now shifting that. I think that Jamaica and Caribbean people were miles ahead because we already have the heart, but what we don't have now is the money, which is the part I talk about what should be done. We have a good MSME policy. See our people down there. Hey, I mean, it was just on the program just now. In PIO, we have all these working groups. I mean, we have a Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. We have all that is required. What we need now is the Minister of Finance to start put some money to implement the policy. Now, there's a $60 billion for the social sector, you know. But when Mike have a team that have responsibility to implement MSME policy, and the SCs are part of MSME policy, I'm going to say, boy, where's the money? I'm saying, nah, if we don't have no money. It's like it's a joke. So what we have is people with heart and brain but no funds. So we get suboptimal outcomes. We're still doing a lot of work. But if we do get the resources, then the impact will be phenomenal. And I told you, it's phenomenal.
All right, thank you very much. I have to mention something that you said. You said any business that is not emphasizing a social mission can count or can limit the growth of the business, and that is key. So just wanted to kind of reinforce that. Thank you. All right, Alan?
I wonder if it was a good idea to put me on here for the same panel, you know. Because we talk wholly, you know. So I'm here in my capacity as a consultant, and we did the assessment of the social enterprise in secondary school in Jamaica program, which is a program you see on the canvas behind us. And we have a lot of lessons coming out of that. And so while I will not be identifying specific data points from that research, I'm going to try and locate much of the conversation or some of the conversation in that. But the question you asked is a big one. And let me take it as I understand it and try to present the position about social enterprises and the contemporary nature of them. I'm not going to the historical nature. I use economic driver, social enterprise as an economic driver. It's when you use them term, you kind of want to pit social enterprise against, as I said, traditional enterprise. And we don't like to do that in the social entrepreneurial space. Let me tell you how the better view, or how we appreciate, or what the better view is as we advance. We have the private sector and the public sector. As we know, those two sectors employ most of the people or contribute immensely to our economic growth outlooks, GDP and otherwise. But not a lot is being done in exploring the work of the third sector. And that's how we locate social enterprise in that third sector. There are many third sector actors, but social enterprise in that third sector space is how I'd like to pivot the conversation about social enterprise and economic driver. So let me give you three approaches to understanding and appreciating social enterprise. Social enterprise first and foremost, and this is something that was highlighted in the evaluation. Social enterprise first and foremost is a business. You know, like Rob, I'm a friend in heretical, you know, but we need to be very cautious when we talk about capitalism and evil. You know, too much politics in that, man. Social enterprise is first and foremost a business. You know, a business though, they make money, they make profits. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we're trying to get that out. Notwithstanding, and I've mentioned these are mission-driven. businesses. And that aware now, we are advancing the position that social enterprise, these are entities that use strong business principles to create social value. Yeah, man, so we can have a cake and eat at the same time. We're not chopping off in with a spite to face. Right? And so that is the kind of dynamics within which we try to understand. And some of the things that we would have discerned from the study. And we're now looking at a new iteration of the social enterprise secondary school to reinforce those points. And we would have developed a 6-week program. But again, I'll talk about that later. But that's the first point. You know, that's the first point. Coming Blake, yeah? That's the first point. Social enterprise first and foremost, a business. Now, if just tell you, historically, man, we are charity people, man. Historically, we are outreach people. Now, I've always said, no nurse or no doctor or no police or no teacher who live in any community get any sleep. Everybody knock on them door. Them work straight through and nobody not get paid for that. But we understand in social entrepreneurship a bit differently. Again, how you use strong business principles to create social value. And if you want me to stop, tell me now, I can go on. Right? That's the first point. And so the second point is that when we get into understanding how we use strong business principles to create social value, then it starts with moving away from what Knife always talk about again. I mentioned Knife only because we do work. We are move away from welfare. That welfare model, we're putting that aside. And we are understanding social entrepreneurship as a vehicle that we can use to put aside that welfare model. You know, we're into wealth creation, wealth generation. If you have money, man, yeah, man, we need to have money. Because you cannot get the work done if you don't have the resources to do it. And that is why we are always in the welfare mode, depending on others to provide that resources rather than appreciating and using those strong business principles to create that social value. Triple or double bottom line with the pan, man. So unlike the traditional business, that is just a single bottom line making a profit, we are going for triple and double. Yes? I'm going to stop here so I'm going to come back to the point because I want to get a chance. But give thanks.
Thank you, Alan.
That was very well said. He took basically what I was going to say. So just let me augment it just a little bit. First, you cannot be a social enterprise if you are not making profit. If you are not making profit, then you're not a social enterprise. So we have to start with that. That's the first line. The second line, the double bottom line, is that you have to be caring about your people. And we've seen that through history. We've seen through industrial reformations. We've seen workers' rights increase, and people be aware that an employer can't take advantage of the employee, and we've seen that over time. Now we're seeing that there's a triple bottom line, that you have to take care of planet, you have to take care of profit, people, and planet. But really where we get to in the quadruple bottom line is where that goodness begets more goodness. So then the organization that's doing those three things is starting to empower and inspire other ideas, other creative things to pop up that are totally independent and external from that organization. So that's really where we have to get to. And I see things moving in a positive direction. We're making progress towards that end.
All right, well, thank you. I think we're off to a great start. Thank you so much for confirming the link between social enterprises and building or growing the economy here. Now, one of the things that I don't think anybody has mentioned as yet was in terms of the legislative framework and environment that is needed to promote this. So go ahead, Dr. Knight.
The framework exists. And Jamaica is so far ahead. Remember also Jamaica's social stock exchange, which I think is only Brazil probably have something similar to that. We had the MSME policy. I actually got a chance to review that policy in 2017. I was asked to submit on the 1st of January, which we did. And since that has been submitted, we have had all these groups meeting to find ways of implementing the policy. But it's not the brain we don't have, nor the heart we don't have, it's the money not being allocated by the Ministry of Finance to implement the policy. And that's about the social enterprise policy. It's the overall, you see, this is what speaks to the hypocrisy. And as social entrepreneurs, there's one thing you have to learn. You have to always talk truth, no matter who it wants for hurt. We have an Economic Growth Council. And we keep arguing that MSMEs, remember social enterprises are MSMEs, but not all social enterprises are MSMEs. See? No. What have an Economic Growth Council are that MSMEs are going to be the driver of an economy. We know it's a transition MSME. Who on that Economic Growth Council is a specialist in MSME? or in social entrepreneurship. So it's talk we're talking. And the fact that we're talking is evidenced by the fact that we don't have no real budget to implement the thing as well. So it's not the absence of policy or legislation. It's the absence of the will to really finance. And what we're doing now, which I just mentioned, even the $60 billion that we're talking about, it seems like it's a welfare strategy as a social investment, direct investment, where you expect a substantive positive rate of return on that investment. It's like it's a sorry for handout kind of thing would happen again because we have a crisis, so we can give some people some money. If you can put $60 billion, you know what $60 billion out of really channeled investment can do in terms of transforming a country? Shift mindset. So as good as we are in the country, I don't think we see the social sector, the third sector, as a vehicle that is going to transform resources into significant sources of wealth. But this is blindness, because you ask yourself the counterfactual. What if we didn't have all these actors in the social sector, whether they're social enterprises or not? What would have been the state of the country now, even in the pandemic? We're under the paradigm paralysis of traditional businesses and hoping that the persons in the private sector will truly transform the thing. But learning first year economics about the invisible hand, people operate off their own self-interest, especially when you're treated like a selfish self-interest. And the hope is that something is going to trickle off to support people. You do not create systemic changes by a trickle-down model. It has to be something that creates a structural shift, and you do that by putting in meaningful investment, especially where the people have the capacity to observe, which has been shown in many cases that many of the organizations in the social sector do have the capacity to absorb and utilize resources properly. And we will speak to that when we talk about SROIs as well.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Naif. So you have highlighted the pain points or the gaps in the legislative frameworks. What we have seen as someone also in the social enterprise space, and I'm sure for many of us, we're aware of the work that is going on. And so even though it might be moving slowly and may not be where we want it to go, even organizations such as the British Council, MyCAF and other organizations, they're all playing their part. And I'm sure that once we continue to collaborate and maybe even coming out of this program, more collaboration can be had so that this needle can actually be moved quicker and to a higher place so that we can achieve the ideal legislative framework that we need in Jamaica for the third sector. Right. Any other contributions to the framework? No? Okay. All right. So
there's no shortage of money. I'm not want to talk about anything, but note that JSIF under the Ready To program, supported by the EU, have injected is about to inject $1.9 billion. It was called agritourism, and they were targeting a lot of community-based organizations. Look at the structure of the CDCs. Many of these CDCs are now being registered with the Commonwealth of Jamaica, and they are also registered with the Benevolent Society, but they are using a social enterprise business model. That is $1.9 billion worth of injection. So imagine if we actually set proper programs that supports the success of these organizations. So you see, so while the state in the Ministry of Finance not putting the money, there are programs that you have suggested, whether it be through USAID, whether it be through the EU, whether it be through the British Council. There have been numerous of these programs, especially by the USAID, since the last 10 years, that have been doing significant amount of work. What I'm saying, Virgin, is that our country don't depend upon a guy from the next place stream international funding organization to support the growth of a third sector. Right. Start with some money inside of the space. That's Charmin and our friend can get some things to do. Okay. I mean, them need upper work, but them need more. Them need resources.
Yes. All right. All right. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to jump over to Andre. As a practicing social entrepreneur, operating your own social enterprise, and you've shared that you have actually developed more businesses, you mentioned, I would have read in your profile, that you would have actually gotten support through agencies here in Jamaica and also international programs to aid in the growth and development of your social enterprise. So can you tell us, what would you say is needed on the business front, whether it's funding, more funding? Dr. Naif has spoken about funding. Is it more technical support? and anything else that you think can actually help social entrepreneurs or those wanting to go into social entrepreneurship?
All right. So as someone who is a social entrepreneur and is around others, I think it makes a very big difference when you recognize that you aren't the only one who has this kind of way of looking at things. So I believe community is a very fundamental place to start. So I'm very happy to have been a part of the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools project, because what we're doing is we're helping to train these high school students that are bursting with ideas to just have the kind of mindset that it is, it's possible for you to want to be an entrepreneur, and you're excited about creating a venture and putting it out into the world. And then when we educate and we share examples and we provide the principles that allow these same high school students to take their ideas and just build on them a bit more to turn them into social ventures, then it also helps with the community level. And I can't underscore that enough, because another thing that entrepreneurs who are business owners know is that it can make it very lonely when you are trying to run an organization and you're building something. You might have employees, or and not all of us have co-founders, but there's something about being able to have an open and honest conversation with someone else who is going through the same thing. So I'm underscoring that one thing that can help is to continue to train and teach and provide examples of solid, good social entrepreneurs, so that people know that there's a community out there, and there is a community here in Jamaica, and that people can get connected to that. And then building from that, I would say all the things that anybody who is building something, maybe bootstrapping it, need, we also need them. We also need opportunities to get funding. We also need to be able to build on whatever money we have set aside. We can go to somebody and say, a financial institution, and say, we have a vision that requires more than what we currently have. How can you be of support? And currently there is going to be a lot of education that happens when it comes to even financial institutions taking into consideration the particularities of your business venture. If you're a social enterprise, there is more to be done in terms of helping these financial institutions to take into consideration your reality as a social entrepreneur. And there is, I believe that can be highlighted as something that can be worked on. It's not only good for the upcoming generation and those of us in our circle to know that what we're talking about is a good thing. It's also important for the wider society to know. So these conversations are very important, and the decision makers as well in the financial institutions and around the policy spaces. So I'd say that's another need. I'd stop right there in terms of those two things: community and education, so that those in decision-making spaces can relate to those of us who come to them with requests.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I think Alan wants to contribute.
Right, I want to segue, because I said earlier, I'm a part of a team that did an assessment and evaluation of the Social Enterprise Secondary School Jamaica program. And Andre raised some of those things that they are doing and we have looked at and made an assessment. And so earlier I said 3 and I mentioned 2. SC first and foremost business, moving away from welfare towards wealth creation. And thirdly, and this really now is one of the major findings, I would say, coming out of the study that we did for British Council, and this is in high school, and that make it even more profound, is that when we had the assessment and we looked at the data, had our conversations, it is really the yearning for or moving towards a new business class. And I just want to make that connection in terms of what the question you asked, Andre, in terms of what it is that you have seen as a practitioner and some of the things that you would recommend to improve the space. And just to go back to the importance of the third sector and social enterprise within the third sector as an important contributor to economic growth, or let me say potential contributor to economic growth. And so when we came up with the concept about the creation of a new business class. And when we engage with the Social Enterprise in Secondary School Jamaica program, this idea was seen as extremely novel and innovative. On the one hand, you find that youngsters recognize, and this was just, for me, was instructive. Youngsters recognize that, we need to do something. Not all of us are going to be engaged in the traditional first or second or public or private sector. But there's a sector to look at. The level of innovation that it brings, and I think I heard it on the panels before, and the minds of the youngsters. The problems that we're facing, nonetheless, and this go back to my first point, is that throughout the assessment, youngsters had a challenge. They have a serious issue with, okay, is this outreach or is this business? They had this challenge. So even though we have sessions, we engage them, they love it, them still conflicted. Again, the mind is still located in the welfare model. We're doing outreach. So we are going to be assisting with some recycling program. But the value, the economic value, that hasn't sunk in. But the environmental value, they understand that clearly. So they have a concern, okay, are we going to make a living and so on. And we now have come up with an idea coming out of that assessment to deepen the engagement in the schools, to get them at that age to understand that you are indeed, we are training to become part of a new business class. Because this issue is still, I'll leave Blake to tell us his experience. This issue is still very, very, it permeates the sector, the practitioners out here. Some of them still spend more time on outreach than making money. And so they are heavily dependent on, as Niall said, donor funding or other funding. And I'm happy to have heard some of the conversations earlier about the importance of financial literacy, because those things are absent at that stage. And so we become social entrepreneurs coming out of that tradition and still do not sufficiently grasp the importance of this first and foremost being a business. And so I want to just make that point, that based on the assessment that we have done and what we have found, that is still a need.
Okay, thank
I would just add to that, it's a mental paradigm shift. And so it takes a lot of work to declutter a slate that's full of entitlement and welfare and outreach and charity type of incentives, where it's about feeling pity for somebody that's in a tougher situation than you, and you giving something to them. It's a lot of work to clean that off and to start over fresh and say, no, everybody has the potential to do good. So what are you going to do? And to start with what we have instead of looking at a situation and say, what's not there, what do we need? Let's focus on what we already have and build on that. It takes a lot of work to shift that mindset away from charity, away from handouts, and focusing more on actually developing and using the resources that are around us. And work is being done. There's progress being made. But it speaks to a young generation that went through this program, and I'm just learning these results now. But it's not that surprising that it's still a struggle for young people to make that mental shift, because what else do you see in society except for mostly you see welfare type of charitable handout activities. But I do think the generation that's coming now is going to be poised to make that mental leap more quickly and more easily than past generations.
And while you're speaking, Blake, so you operate one of Jamaica's most successful social enterprises, Def Can Coffee. And you are coming from the traditional charity or nonprofit model. How did you make that switch? And how do you continue to use social enterprise to empower the deaf community?
Yeah, it's a great question. Reading books and research, things like Toxic Charity, things like When Helping Hurts, reading books that help you understand that charitable activities, albeit in many situations, in a humanitarian aid situation where it's a crisis, are necessary. You can't sustain yourself in a situation of humanitarian aid. And it's very simple. You just ask different questions. If you ask what is needed in a community, you're focusing on what somebody doesn't have, as opposed to asking what do you have and how can we utilize that. That's an asset talent-based development approach. And so it's simply asking different questions. And so for us in the deaf community, we were challenged to say, okay, these youth are growing up and they feel like they can't. Oh, I'm deaf, I can't. Okay, that's nonsense. You're a human being, you can. How do we transition out of that negative mindset? Well, let's show them a role model, somebody who is like them, and proving that they can. And so that's simply how we started. Without any idea to have a business, we took a field trip. We went to rural St. Elizabeth, and we met Clark, who was a deaf coffee farmer. And his passion for coffee inspired them, our students, to believe, hey, if he can do coffee, why can't I too? And it was simply that shift of, okay, let's focus on somebody who is like you, giving them a role model that they can say, this person is just like me. And if they can do it, why can't I either? So it's changing that mindset. And for us, it was Clark. It was that inspirational role model that proved to them that I can do it because he can do it. And we need more of those role models, and then those role models to actually interact personally with youth. Not to put them on a screen, not to have on a social media campaign where they see it and it's some distant famous person, but human interaction, face-to-face, hands on hands, working together to see this person, they can do it and I can do it too.
Okay, great. That's a great story and example. And so I hear you're saying that even with the social enterprise program in school, sometimes we have to take it from out of the classroom itself and literally thrust these students into the field to see somebody who is doing it, to inspire them and to get them to realize that they can. Great. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I ended up having the kind of approach to doing business that I have. And I recognize that it's not something that happens overnight, right? So it's not like a course that we did or I did that said to me, convinced me that, you know, I want to be an entrepreneur that prioritizes social mission. My personal journey to being where I am now involved, you know, living in a different country, living in South Africa, being a part of a social intervention that followed more of a traditional model where we got grant funding or donor funding, and we were told we were poised, we were mandated to implement it in a certain way. And thinking that was going to be a good experience to have, and it really was, but it was also eye-opening because we recognized that while it's very good to provide these, you know, like to go in and do interventions, and I'm not saying that there's not a place for that, there certainly is, but there is also something about the empowerment of someone to recognize what they have in their hands and how they can utilize it to make their lives better. And I believe well, I know for sure that was a part of my transformation process. So my encouragement is that there might be small things that happen along the journey for people who are socially minded, and I think they will all come together over time to, you know, maybe allow you to end up at a certain point. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you for sharing, Andre. So we have a question coming in from Dr. Shetty, and this might be a follow-up to what you had started explaining, Dr. Knife. So the question is, in this monetary, military, materialistic system, how can we attract investment on harnessing God-given resources like solar, water, wind, generated energy, homegrown food like rice to make our rice and peas, use innovative housing with local materials rather than burn petrol to get expensive electricity, import what we eat and drink, etc., to move the vulnerable communities from welfare to wealth creation? Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, no, I'm not read again. You might ask, how you can people put money in the sector? The reality is you have to show them what the return on their investment would be. It's not something which is so hard to understand. People need to know if they're going to give you money, what is going to be returned. Now, the question which you might ask is, what is that you're actually going to measure? Because while in a regular business, you can explicitly see what you want to measure in terms of what your profit margins are. We have to now look at what the value creation will be from these social enterprise and then start to monetize it. Let me give you a quick example. Suppose your organization during the time of COVID supports persons through offering counseling as a way of relieving stress. And your organization got a $10 million grant to run this kind of program, and you have targeted a number of young women, single parent, young women, who are very stressed out at this point in time. how would you monetize that service? What you have to do is use a proxy. So I would say, okay, what is the cost of providing this kind of counseling to somebody in a place like Bellevue? Because we're talking about mental health. It actually costs $1.5 million a year to counsel somebody in Bellevue under the mental health program, which means then if that sister had 10 persons in her program, that is $15 million worth of value she is generated by just offering the counseling service. Because if she was not doing it, somebody else would have to be providing the service. Right. So you can always monetize. So somebody will know then, okay, it makes sense to invest, because what you will do is divide what you have invested by the value creation. You will get the ratio to show that for every dollar spent, this is the amount of value being generated. Now, the reason that is not done, I find, is that when you start to look at value creation from social enterprises, the rate of return tends to be phenomenally high, in the hundreds of percentage. We did the same thing with DEFCON, and we got a couple 100% in terms of the rate of return on investment. Now, for a regular business, if you get a 25% return on investment, that is supposed to be very good. So you know what will happen now? People have to start questioning, does it make sense then for us to be putting money, giving money, what we have done to many sectors in Jamaica, in private people, which keep money in your pocket, which have a lower rate of return on investment, as against putting it in organizations that have a social mission that will ensure that the money goes back into circulation. Remember in economics, you know, a saving or money in somebody's pocket is a contraction in the economy. An expenditure causes an expansion in the economy. The mandate of a social enterprise is to make money and spend the money to grow the business or to support the people that you have targeted as your beneficiaries. So either way you take it, you're just going to have a greater multiplier effect from a social enterprise, because money is going to be spent and not necessarily be saved. So it's not so difficult as people might think. They just refuse to do it sometimes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else wants to add anything to that question? No? No? All right, so I just want to add a follow-up. Where, from your expertise and knowledge, where can people get investment to currently? Where can social entrepreneurs get investment to either start or even to do the level of enterprise that even Dr. Shetty has mentioned?
All right, let me start, because I probably spent some time investing or working for organizations that invest in social enterprise. I was tempted not to respond to Dr. Shetty, but I'm going to start by saying that, you know, some of the time we can't just dash everything at social enterprise either. You know, I got through a bad thing, everything. So we'll fix it. No, that's how it go. You know, just like how a business hard to start up, yeah, man, social enterprise takes some work. Right. It doesn't only require resources. You hear from Blake, you have to look at what you have, right? And then you look at how you can utilize that. And be good always beget good somewhere. But when you can show evidence or proof that your thing works, that is how you go out now and you can seek investors. And it doesn't have to come necessarily from the donor sector initially. There's also, again, if you're working with strong business principles, you can always design a social enterprise in a particular way that can get some funding. Again, most of us are not that confident, so we don't go that route. We wait until we get some donation. That is fine as well. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that the way in which donation is presented or offered, it doesn't argue well for the sustainability of those organizations, because all we do with donations most times is check boxes, as opposed to ensure that we invest heavily in institutional, which is the enabling environment, and the technical capacity, which is those who are doing it. So it's a very tricky thing. I have come to appreciate based on how the sector is organized. Notwithstanding, if you're going to get a donation or if you're going to be supported by some kind of corporate social responsibility venture, what is important here is that we do not try to fix everything. You know, let me give you one example, that's the main point, and I can pass it on. I used to be at a particular community, and we get $100,000 to bring 20 students to. At that time, it was GSAT, for them to do well in GSAT. But the nature of community organization is that you're not turning back anybody. So we have 100 students coming into the center. We don't turn them back. We take them, 100,000, you know. And based on how it was calculated, that can bring 20 students to be successful in GSAT. But we take the 100. And when the person come and them talk to this, every student love it. Yeah, man, I enjoy myself and I have a nice time, and every parent love it because they pick me off the road. How many students pass GSAT? 2. Now when you go back to your donor, we give you 100,000 to make 20 youth pass. And you tell me, no, but a 2 pass, but 100 people like it. No, man, that don't make it. A pass, me want. A strong business model would have, what a strong would have done is say to the 80 and a year time, 20 make it to work with. And when we make that 20, go for the hurdle, we get another $100,000 at 20 more the next iteration. And that's how you do it. But because we don't have that strong business model in our approach, you find that social enterprises, when they get those donations, or even if it's a social organization, when they get those donations, are unable to sustain them activities simply because they never invest in that kind of approach. And that, I think, is what we have to focus on rather than where the money comes from. And I promise you, you only know about DEFCON, you don't know about nothing yet, man. And I tell about social enterprise now, but we know other TV, like I said. And I promise you, so we have enterprises that are social enterprises, we make them from scratch. And so this is how you operate from scratch. That they pull in millions. They make money. They have to make money. Whole heap of money too. And we have 5 youth at work, and then we get 10 youth at work. And then money no make 2 youth after you go sit on one side and wait. Just like business run. But them 2 youth, they would have been so empowered that when them left, them go start them own thing. Which is IRA. That's a part of it as well. Right. So that is how I would want to present a social enterprise and them quest to get investment, as opposed to who have it and who not have it. Because if you go look on the who have it, you know, it now go stretch for everybody. Because SME are struggling for the same money too. Micro business support to the same money. Big business right now are struggling with the same money. So I like Blake's approach in terms of what you have, man. Focus on what you have first and use that and build. And again, we have plenty of examples. So in the next forum, we can start to bring some of them, we can see them.
I think something we have to also highlight, and I mean, Alan mentioned it, is about them capacity to absorb and utilize the money properly, you know. So just like anybody who's a venture capitalist or an angel fund, them assess the organization's capacity to absorb, as against feeling that we just have to spend the money. We have this burn rate for me, say just giving people the money. Because if you don't have the capacity and giving the money, it also means that you threaten your own confidence as an organization, but also your own social capital and the ability to attract other things as well. So the metrics we use to determine whether persons get funding or persons get the investment. We must also realize that, again, the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange has created some kind of platform where they want to try to treat some of these things as businesses. There might be gaps and things that we need to sort out with that, but it shows that there's a kind of thinking about enterprises with strong social mission or social enterprises that them can actually get money to grow business and use a certain kind of metrics to measure their own performance. The gaps tend to be in the metrics. We have the tools, but again, some of the institutions who have the funding don't adopt the tools because from them funder don't necessarily need them to do that. But if you are thinking about your own country and your own business and your own development, you want to use those kind of tools. Where are the people who were trained? What them I do? So where are the tracer systems? You know? Where are the sustainability plans? And if you look at the sustainability plan tool that we have, at the heart of the tool is what? You have to make money to sustain the organization. Right. You know, Alan, I was just saying, you can't train people from a position of weakness. Yeah, you're going to need some money to do what you have to do. And so when we design the business models, every business model we design is a high growth enterprise business model. Because if you're going to want to empower people, see, it's 20 people, but you end up with 100 youth. If you have the money, we're going to take in the 100 youth. When right, you need to show that when you give the money, I mean, spend this money on these 20 people, and then I monetize the value created by those persons now that they are trained, them can start more business and employable and go well in the school. You will start to really make sense to give them money. I might want to give them 200,000. But you have to have your strategy. Matter of fact, if I show you that from your 100,000, I generate a certain amount, you might be more convinced to give me, again, as an added investment, as against charity.
right, thank you so much. So we're winding down, and I have another question for the panel, but before I go to that, I just wanted to hear from Blake again. Can you just share with us some of the challenges that you encountered in DEFCON Coffee, and how did you address those challenges?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lenicia. With life, the challenges you face as a teen are different than what you face as an adult. And each stage of life has its own challenges, and you look back and you realize some of the challenges you had early were really insignificant, but they seemed really big at the time. And it's the same with a business, whether it's a social enterprise, or just a truly profit-driven business, is that your challenges as you grow are always changing, and you'll reach a plateau where the challenges kind of change and it gets to a new level. So for us, like one of the first challenges that we had when we were first playing around with coffee at the school was we didn't have anywhere to get green coffee beans. Clark, the coffee farmer in rural St. Elizabeth, he had a small farm, and he used his own coffee, so he'd sell us literally 3 pounds at a time. That's what we could get from him. Found somebody else, we could get 20 pounds. Over time, you develop. So now we have relationships with every major coffee processor in Jamaica. So getting green coffee beans is not a problem anymore. I had a farmer call me 2 days ago. They saw our coffee trailer at 58 Halfway Tree and is like, "Hey, I'm a coffee farmer. Can you buy my coffee?" I said, "Sure, if it's quality, and if your price is good, So that challenge, goes away. One of the second challenges we had is we were learning how to make good coffee. We didn't have a lot of training opportunities, but as we got training opportunities, our staff became experts. So they've won the past 2 barista competitions at the Jamaica Blue Mountain Coffee Festival. They are now training hearing people around Jamaica that want to run a cafe. They're calling us and asking our deaf staff to train their hearing people on how to brew coffee. So we get past that challenge. So, businesses grow and your challenges morph. I'd say right now, one of our challenges is in the future, how do we take advantage of the opportunity to export and going through the licensing, the registration, all that requires through the red tape. So your business will have challenges and you just have to learn to overcome them.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, so I want to ask the final question for all of you. So we know about, and you've heard it, about an enabling environment. What does an enabling environment look like in practical terms, especially as it relates to social enterprise and its contribution to the economy in Jamaica?
All right. Let me start from where my brethren start ending. Note, it might challenges, but every challenge is an opportunity.
Yes.
What you haven't said is that they are now going to actually plant their own coffee. It's a very serious thing, which means that keep going up and actually value chain because they see it as a business. So the enabling environment must look at what we call the entrepreneurial process, from the idea generation to the actual implementation and harvesting the actual venture. And you have different institutions that have different roles to play at different levels. For example, you have a SDC who through their LEI program have what we call nano or micro enterprises. You have a JBDC that's supposed to offer services along the entire value chain to any kind of business, moving from MSME to a high growth business. You have RADA, through their agriculture program, the farm groups, they are setting up businesses as well and supporting farmers, Yes? So you have so many institutions, but guess what? Again, those people never have enough resources for their extension service providers to offer the kind of service that they should offer. HART, NT have a program, NHT have their social venture program as well. But again, it's about how do you ensure that the people with the technical skills who can support these entities to grow along their growth trajectory actually have the resources to do so. You can't have 100 extension officers to serve 200,000 farmers. That is 1 officer to 2,000 farmers for the year. Yes? So it's those local areas tend to be a major. It's not so much the money, because the support services them can actually access the money. But if you access the funds and can't do the business, it's like you have a double loss.
Okay.
One of the first piece of work where we do, and by the way, me, myself, and I, we did a report on this canvassing the social enterprise space, and we provided 2 bold recommendations. And them pretty generic in terms of how we caption them. A top-down and a bottom-up. But essentially, top-down was referring to that enabling environment. And I've just mentioned a couple of that. what I want to add to this conversation is that in looking at an enabling environment, that top-down, you have to also, you can't see it in isolation or mutually exclusive of a bottom-up. The bottom-up is that ensuring that the capacity is there to absorb. You know, we go around one time around the island with SDC, I think, with the same thing, and that organization set up community-based groups, set up small groups by giving them money, give them money, and they know them can't spend it. And then when them spend it, they misappropriate it, them spend it incorrectly. Then them accuse them of misappropriation and them are thief and them are this and them are that. And really, I mean, if you grew up in a youth club like myself, but the worst position in a youth club is a treasurer position. No? That position mash up the youth club all the while. And that's because you really don't know. But you're so eager to be a part of your club. You run the money thing, man. And it's not a thief, but you don't spend it right. Now, what we're saying is that as much as we want that enabling environment, you know, again, it has to work in tandem with that bottom-up approach where we ensure that capacity is there. And there are many organizations that build the capacity. I think one of the most important areas, though, and I'm talking now specifically to SE, and I'm trying my very best to go back to our research that we did, our assessment for this particular program, we're still at, and I mean, Blake, you might can help, we're still at that definitional issue, you know? We have to understand what the social enterprise is. And we have to appreciate that distinction between the SE and the small, micro, medium enterprise. Right? And that definitional issue is still a challenge. So at the level of bottom-up, with capacity, I think we have to do some more work there. And here what happened now, and this is what I find rather interesting. Again, our mantra, what we carry, you learn by doing. So many of we start out just as a social organization, just doing outreach. But having engaged now with technocrats and so on, and appreciating the space more through workshops like these, you find that while we do it, we get better at it. And so we have to now look at the importance, go back to research again, for the British Council, on this experiential learning platform. Yeah, man, you have to learn by doing. You know, when we bring many practitioners, not the caliber of Rob, because Rob up here, you know, we bring some social enterprise people. They never know a definition, they even know the word, couldn't even spell the word before. But we know that them a practice. Yeah. And I know you want to hear them talk about it.
Okay. I'll answer just now. In terms of people who are doing it, they're doing it even without being told the name of it. And I feel as though, going back to your questions about the enabling environment, it's important to have that, and I applaud every effort in that direction. But we can't take away from, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are known for having grit and resilience and just being, you know, very stubborn when it comes to wanting to accomplish a certain thing. And I'm tempted to think that even without all of the environment fleshed out, because that is a work in progress, people who are minded to create businesses that think about social issues and use business as a way of challenging them, we're going to do it anyway. So just keep on keeping on.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for sharing. So did you have a point? Do you want to contribute to that? Or what?
From our perspective as a social enterprise working specifically within the deaf community, one of the greatest challenges we've had in the enabling environment is oftentimes going to workshops, capacity development things, and not having interpreters. Again, just want to reinforce that today people are seeing an interpreter on their screen because British Council, because Victoria Mutual Foundation have realized it's important that the deaf community has access to this type of content as well. So that as me representing organizations working in the deaf community is here, we're seeing sign language. So the more that we have sign language utilized at different things, the more the 1% of society that's always forgotten, the deaf community, can be included, and then they can play their part into achieving Vision 2030.
It's a Blake raise an opportunity then, because if we find that when we go to do our persons who are interpreters, probably the next area that deaf can need to look at now is providing interpreters for functions as a part of the business.
Yeah.
Yes, may I say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, well, there you have it. problem highlighted. Some people are resolving it, but that's also a business opportunity for you internally.
Organizations too to lead in that charge. So I just want to give props to British Council and VM Foundation for having interpreters here today.
Yes. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to kind of recap, especially the enabling environment points that you've made. So in order to create this enabling environment for social entrepreneurs, we need to look at the technical capacities, especially as it relates to human resources and the ratio of the technical experts working with the entrepreneurs. We also cannot ignore the bottom-up approach, right? That is also very important to ensure that we're getting the right results. And there needs to be a very clear definition when it comes to social enterprises, social entrepreneurs versus SMEs or MSMEs. Okay, and key point, it's always learning by doing. So it's never just sitting down and reading something. It's never just theoretical, but we need to actually launch out and get the work done. So I think those are some very key points and great points, especially for persons who might be watching, to understand how we, within this social enterprise sector, can actually create that space so that persons who exist already within the sector can thrive, and those wanting to enter the sector can have ease of entering the sector. I just wanted to highlight one other thing that I think was key to this discussion on how social enterprises can drive the economy. So you mentioned earlier, Dr. Knife, that based on research that you'd have done, maybe with Alan and through your work, you'd have recognized that the return on investment for social enterprises far outweighs the return on investment for traditional or commercial businesses. And I think that is the answer to that sums up why social enterprises are important to drive the economy in Jamaica, just because of the return on investment. It's not just the profits, but it encompasses everything, the social mission, as you mentioned. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing. I'm sure that we'd have gotten some additional knowledge and insights on how social enterprises can become economic drivers, and continue to do the work that you're doing. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Economic drivers. Them that drive the economic crash already. In the farmer sector has not grown for the past 50 years, them say. So what has been sustaining the Jamaican space? Is more something.
We come out for the place already? That finished? You come like you still have video, so. I believe that they can't have it there alone for now. Good now? Yeah, that will inform my
Studio, burning with the zeal for truth. Social enterprise in secondary schools. At Glenmere High School, take one. Flagrant.
Glenmere started September 15, 1958 with a small community, and Dr. Scott headed that. It was founded by Percival Gibson, of course.
Out of this program, I want to see innovation. I want to see students using resources that's in their environment and their schools to really solve social issues. So, you know, let's say there is a garbage issue. I want to see students using that to generate energy or using it to generate products and services. That's the sort of thing I want to see coming out of the social enterprise program in secondary schools.
Stand down the ring. Stand down the ring. Stand down the gospel ring.
It intrigues me because it's a way for all of us to learn about the community and how we can benefit and how we can help others around us and the environment itself.
One of the programs that is taught here at Glenmuir at the sixth form level is entrepreneurship. So we have students who are doing a course in entrepreneurship. And some of these students, we have talented students, in fact. We have students who have been involved in photography as a business. We have students who are artistic, so they do visual arts. They have created their own pieces, bracelets, for example. And these students and others now have their entrepreneurial idea. So what we can
do? What are you going to tell them so we do? We make learning fun.
Educators GA is just happy to be a part of this initiative by the British Council, Social Enterprise in Schools. I mean, we are on a mission to make learning fun and to revolutionize education on a whole. So to be a part of an initiative that sees us coming into the school and engaging the students, sharing our story, you know, explaining how we got started, how we empower youth, and how we do what we do, you know, making money and helping people at the same time. It's an awesome feeling. I think this initiative has introduced the term social enterprise, social entrepreneurship to the students, and I think it has shown them that you don't just have to be in business to make money. You can make money and do good at the same time. And I think it has cleared up the misconceptions that students have about the word social. That's what I think. So I think when they get into the club phase, we'll see some awesome businesses coming from these students, socially driven businesses.
I think this would be beneficial in my school because we have a lot of budding entrepreneurs within the school, and this initiative that the British Council has offered to this school will offer us a chance to be able to implement what we have within our great minds and put them into use so that as young people who are the next generation, we can actually implement and allow our solutions to be resolved.
Today is a great day. I mean, any opportunity to be speaking with students in schools about opportunities for empowerment, I think it's amazing. Link Your Purpose is an amazing online platform. It is an online platform that allows for students to go get access to a career quiz to kind of help them figure out what works for them career-wise, as well as it allows for them to get a career mentor online and be aware and be able to access youth opportunities. Now, what is so amazing is that Link Your Purpose has been partnering with the Ministry of Education, the British Council, so that we can go into schools on this tour, so we can inform students what it really means to be a social enterprise, because we are a social enterprise, and we try to help them to understand what it means being a social enterprise in terms of making money, trying to tackle some form of social issue within society, such as providing employment and helping students to know what they need to do through career advisement. And then at the same time, we give them a great opportunity to know how they can tie it all together to be conscious of the environment, so they too can one day become a social entrepreneur.
Moving forward, we want to now get the students who have been doing entrepreneurship as a subject, students who are entrepreneurs within themselves. We mentioned about the ones who are involved in photography. We mentioned about our artist who is creating his own cosmetic wares. We have other students with who have created other products. We want to now infuse these ideas, get the ones who have the ideas out there, get the students from lower school to now come together, and together we can now do a project that is going to benefit not just the school internally, but on the wider scale, because we want to make sure that whatever we're doing impact on a global issue. At Glenmuir, we think big, we do think big, things big. We want to get everybody involved.
Social enterprise in secondary high schools. That's a wrap.
Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. That quote from the U.S. author and philanthropist, the late Helen Keller, really encapsulates what today was about, which was the spirit of partnership. And so in closing, I would like to thank all of you for turning up today and sharing with us. First of all, the young men and women at the center of this program, the British High Commission, the British Council, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, the Ministry of National Security, our partners and sponsors on this project, the VM Foundation, the Grace and Staff Community Development Foundation, and again, all of you for showing up. My name is Archibald Gordon. Thank you for having joined us, and good afternoon.